Hi everyone, welcome to Deep Geek Live. This is the latest, possibly the last in a series of live streams looking at different areas in the world of Ice and Fire. We've been working our way across, first of all we did Westeros, and now we're working our way across Essos and we've reached the Far East. Don't worry, this isn't the last live stream. I'll be back next week and maybe later we'll talk about what we're going to do then. But this is now looking at the extreme far east of the continent. Before I get into all of that, though, I always try to start with a little bit of a roundup of the news, what's going on in the world of great books and TV shows. A couple of things just to pick up on in terms of the TV production. Firstly, I'm sure you spotted it already, but House of the Dragon is now fully up and running and filming. We've had our first official production shots, or promotional shots, I suppose they are really. We had 3 different promotional shots of the main cast. If you want to have a look at them, head over to Twitter, either go to the main House of the Dragon Twitter account, or if you want to look at my account, I've also got my thoughts on there as well. So go and have a look at that. But the summary is they're looking excellent. They've got a lot of, well, there were 3 shots. The first shot was that of Team Black. And they were, so this was Rhaenyra and Daemon. Matt Smith looking absolutely fantastic there, and Olivia Cook as well. I think the only thing to say there is that the casting looks excellent. Secondly, we have a first look at the Greens. We have the Hightowers, Otto and Alicent, and they had quite a Tudor vibe going on with their costumes, I thought. Again, very much looking the part. Thirdly, we had a picture of Corlys Velaryon, the Sea Snake, who was looking epically badass. So I'm very excited about this. I don't know. I suspect that what we're going to see over the course of the next few months is a lot of working with the fan community to try and build up excitement about House of the Dragon. This is quite a big deal for HBO. If we kind of take a step back, they obviously had Game of Thrones. After that finished, everyone was on a bit of a downer, and they are now wanting to expand out into a universe of George R.R. Martin inspired material, things in the world of Game of Thrones. If that's going to work, this first spin-off has to work. This is their Mandalorian, if you like. This is the thing that they're pushing everything into, and they're wanting us to love. And after that, as happened with The Mandalorian, they then announced a dozen or so Star Wars spin-offs. That's the plan here with Game of Thrones, and the world of Game of Thrones, is that they are pushing everything at this. And when this works, as they hope, they can then announce all of these other spin-offs and create a universe, a franchise that they can keep on building. So this is something they're going to be pushing everything at. I think they're going to be drip feeding us things over the course of the next year. I'm not expecting this to appear for at least a year. I wouldn't have thought 6 months or so, maybe even more in terms of filming, and then another 6 months or so of post-production. So don't expect it before about summer next year. But anyway, it's a good start. It looks good, and I think that's all we can expect at this point. The other filming update we've got is the Wheel of Time. If you're into the Wheel of Time, that seems to have restarted filming as well. That's for those who don't know it, this is an epic high fantasy series. Robert Jordan wrote it. Brandon Sanderson finished it off after Robert Jordan unfortunately died a couple of books before the end. I think it was Brandon did the last 3 books in the series. This is being turned, again, it's another Amazon series. It's being turned into quite a high budget series as well. It's almost like the precursor to the Lord of the Rings in the way that Amazon are going to be using this, I suspect. But they filmed the first 6-ish of 8 episodes for season 1 before lockdown. They've now got back, and they're now going to try and finish off the last 2 episodes. So expect to see that maybe towards the end of this year. That's the plan anyway. So that's where we're at. As I've said before, I think this is exciting times for fans of high-budget epic fantasy TV. We've got a lot going on. We've got The Witcher, then we've got Wheel of Time, then we've got Lord of the Rings, then we'll have House of the Dragon, and then possibly even more expanding out after that. We've got other things like Narnia, Redwall, Conan on the horizon after all of this. So exciting times. Things are now starting to get back into production, so expect to see things appearing on your screens from the end of next year. But let's get into the topic today. Today we're looking at the far east of Essos. And just in terms of geography, what I mean is that we've got Qarth, which is the far extent of where most people go. It's on the far end of the Red Waste. If you remember in A Clash of Kings, Dany, or season 2 of Game of Thrones, Dany spends a long time working her way through this desolate wasteland, which is the Red Waste. This is where the Qarthian Empire used to be. The only city still standing from that is the city of Qarth. The rest, and Dany comes across at least one of these destroyed cities that have been destroyed by, among others, the Dothraki. The city of Qarth, which is behind 3 massive city walls, survived and is now very much a trader city. Its outlook is not into Essos, its outlook is into the sea. That is the sort of the gateway to the far east of Essos, where we have this dividing line of mountains which sort of bisect Essos right from the north all the way down to the south. There are a few ways through, but you have to go through with a guide, and these mountains cut off what we think of and what we have experienced of Essos and the rest. And beyond that, we do not have any first-hand accounts in anything that George R. R. Martin has done. So we get these great empires. We get Yi, and across even further, we get the plains of the Yogos Nai, and then we get Asshai, these places which are almost legendary. And George R. R. Martin wants them to be legendary. He wants this to be not just a matter of where we get legends in Westeros and Essos of hundreds and thousands of years ago, where we can take some things and not take other things. He wants this to be a part of the world that no one that we know has been to, except perhaps a few legendary characters back in the past. So even the things of now that we hear, we can't take exactly for the truth. So that is the kind of the world that we're living in. And beyond Asshai, then we get into the Shadowlands and things that are even more mysterious that no one that we know has ever even or dreamt of going to. Even the greatest magic users over there in Asshai do not pass that far. So that is the world that we're in, is this world of shadows, it's this world of legend, it's this world of mystery. What we have in terms of source material for it is the World of Ice and Fire, which is written ostensibly by the Maesters, and then a few random mentions dotted throughout A Song of Ice and Fire. We do not have much, and I think that is the framing that we have to have for all that we are talking about here when we're talking about Yi or Asshai or Qarth or anything, is that we have to take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. Qarth perhaps less than the rest. We have seen Qarth, we know a bit about Qarth, but beyond that, we can't be 100% sure because they are legendary lands, effectively. Couple of quick thank yous to Ryan Larkin for the super sticker before we went on air, Mara Lee for the super sticker, and also a super chat saying just a show of love, appreciation and support for the excellent content, merch and stories on both your channels. Been especially enjoying the Lord of the Rings videos. Yeah, if you like Lord of the Rings, do please check out my Lord of the Rings videos as well. Tootsback and Leben Langer, thank you very much for the super chat saying, hi Robert, hope you're having a great stream. It's going well so far, thank you. Unfortunately can't stay. Quick question. If Yi is China, and saying, I know it's not one-to-one, but if Yi is China, what is Leng? Okay, so Leng, again, let's do a quick geography lesson because we haven't been there, so it's quite hard to get these things into our mind. Yi is a huge part of the continent east of the mountains. South, we get a big island, and that island is Leng. Now, we're told... Again, this covers 3-4 pages in the world of Ice and Fire, but it seems to be covered in jungle. It's got an ancient civilization going on there. We hear of an empress there are 2 cultures, a sort of a north and a south culture, and the empress has 2 husbands. We hear, it's a fascinating place by the sounds of it, of ancient ruins deep in the jungle, and legends there that if you descend down the stairs deep underground, you'll find even more greater ruins underground, and if you descend even further, that is where the deep ones are. So you're right, this isn't a one-for-one. There is clearly a lot of Lovecraftian imagery going on here, the deep ones and all the rest of it. George R. R. Martin has happily nodded to H.P. Lovecraft there. In terms of inspiration for it, I think that there's probably a Sri Lankan feel in terms of the dual cultures, but in terms of the jungles and the hidden ruins within them, then I don't know. I don't know. I've not seen him talk about this at all, but I certainly get the kind of the feel of the Vietnam, Laos kind of part of the world, Cambodia, where you get these huge jungles across so much of the country, and then you hack your way through them, and then suddenly there's this magnificent temple in front of you. That's the kind of feel that's there. As always, and I always give this kind of little asterisk next to these kind of things, George R. R. Martin, as you know, does not do one-for-one. He does not cut and paste across from the real world into his world. He takes inspiration from various places. So I think he took inspiration from a few different places in order to create the Isle of Leng. But thank you very much. Interesting starter question going on there. Also had a question from, if I can find it, Aeon560 saying, you're the only reason I can sleep nowadays. Thank you very much. I take this as a great compliment, because I think this is people tend to put me on in order to, and listen to me in order to get to sleep, and I think that's lovely. I mean, I'm going to ignore the possibility that I have a soporific voice, but thank you very much. I'm taking the positives from this. Thank you. Henry Cavill, thank you. Henry Cavill, hi. Thank you very much for the super stick. It was Henry Cavill's birthday yesterday, so happy birthday, Henry Cavill. And question from AK Channel TV saying, thoughts on Corlys being race bent? Wouldn't that mean there would be more biracial targs? And here's to all the rest of it. So all the rest of it, I learned last week, I think. Apparently this is a thing I say a lot, which is why I put it in the title of this video. So in terms of Corlys Velaryon, so this is, I suspect, I mean, I don't think I particularly agree with that term, but this is a reference, I think, to the fact that Corlys Velaryon on House of the Dragon, the casting has cast a black actor to be Corlys Velaryon. So my thoughts on this, I mean, I'm okay with it, is my short version. My slightly longer version is that this is an adaptation, and it's obviously for the TV show and the showrunners to decide on who they wish to cast, and I'm fully in favor of them casting the best person for this role, full stop. In terms of the slightly more nuanced, I assume the challenges, if it were there, is from the text, is that the Velaryons, House Velaryon, is of Valyrian descent, and we know what that means in terms of physicality. I think that, I mean, I've seen a few people say, we never get a description of Corlys Velaryon. We do not ever get a full description of Corlys Velaryon. That is absolutely true. So we do not know what he personally looks like, beyond the fact that House Velaryon is Valyrian, which we get the silver hair, we get the purple eyes. They're not going with the purple eyes by the looks of it, incidentally. The complete digression. I will come back to this point in just one moment. The purple eyes, a couple of people asked me about this on Twitter. The purple eyes is a distinctive of the Valyrian heritage. And when they first started filming Game of Thrones way back, whenever it was, 10 years ago or something, they did try to get Emilia Clarke to wear contact lenses with a purple tint. But she personally found them incredibly irritating. It didn't work for her. She couldn't act properly with them in, so they said, okay, let's forget it. We're not going to do the purple eyes for the Valyrians. And that appears to have stuck. Now, I'm sure you'd agree with me that Emilia Clarke still made an excellent Daenerys, and I didn't hear much come back through the whole of Game of Thrones about why haven't they got purple eyes. Yes, I would like them to have purple eyes, because that would be closer to the books, but they decided not to go for that, and that appears to be, from what we've seen on the promo shots, that appears to be the case also in the spin-off House of the Dragon. But anyway, coming back to Corlys Velaryon, I would make a couple of points here. The first point is that George R. R. Martin himself has gone on record a couple of times. Go check out So Spake Martin if you're interested, which is a collection of things that he has gone on record as saying about Game of Thrones. He has gone on record as saying that if he could redo it, then he would make the Valyrians have a darker skin tone, for a variety of reasons, partly because they come from a sunnier climate and all the rest of it. So this, in a way, is actually going back to what George R. R. Martin himself was wanting. So I'm quite relaxed about that. But also, a few people, and you also particularly, I think, I can't remember what you exactly said there, in terms of the Targaryens. Yes, so there's one of the key plot points in the build-up to the Dance of the Dragons is the fact that Corlys Velaryon's grandchildren, who would theoretically, being Rhaenyra's, through Rhaenyra's line, be in line to the throne, did not look like their father, Laenor, who was Corlys's son, but Rhaenyra's alleged lover. Now, to my mind, actually, if that is not just about the color of their hair and their build, but also about skin tone, then that actually probably works better visually for the TV show. So I think the short answer is I don't mind at all, and I think that this is true to the spirit of what George R. R. Martin seems to have, on reflection, wanted. And frankly, from that one picture that we've seen, the actor looks absolutely, in my personal opinion, looks absolutely perfect and badass. So that's my general take on that. Question. I think I saw another. Harry O'Leary saying, "Greetings from Ireland." Hi there, Ireland. Did the faith of Ralore originate in Asshai? Are we given a description of the origin of the faith of the Red God? No, we are not given a description of the origin of the faith of the Red God. It's and might it have come from Asshai? Possibly. I think the clear implication we have, this stretches right across Essos and also into Westeros. It's not just Melisandre. There are temples to the Red God in a few other port cities around Westeros, but where it comes from, we're not told. But the clear implication is that the foundational idea here is that this is a Manichaean world. Two gods. We get the god of fire and we get the god of ice. Now, that strikes me, because we're in the world of ice and fire, as kind of harking back to something which perhaps developed from the first Long Night. We have ice is bad, fire is good, and that you can easily see if fire defeated ice and fire so if fire defeated ice and saved humanity, clearly you could see that a religion could, thousands of years ago, have developed up about two equal and opposite forces, fire and ice, and fire is good and is on the side of humanity. So that is the general, and we will definitely build on this theme about the origins of the Azor Ahai myth and all the rest of it, and how it applies to the Far East, because there are some echoes there. It's not just in Westeros. There are some echoes that we get from all the way across to the far side of Essos. Various people talking about purple eyes. Andrew Kay saying Witcher did it easily enough, getting purple eyes. So yes, the possibility is there that they can now edit it in post-production. This is entirely possible. I think, I might be wrong, but I think Henry Cavill did wear the contacts, and if he was okay with the yellow contacts for that, then that's fine. But it certainly seems at the moment as if they are not going with this idea of purple eyes again. I mean, I'm slightly disappointed, but I can live with it. Incidentally, I'm going to go off on one now. Incidentally, I think my take perhaps is less purist than others in terms of book adaptations to TV, in the sense that yes, I want them to reflect the spirit of the book, and I want them to reflect the details of the books as much as is possible. But if you take, for example, the Lord of the Rings movies, I suspect that most of us would agree that that's probably as good as we can get in terms of adaptation of book to film. They did it brilliantly. They got showered with Oscars. If you've not watched them recently, rewatch them. They stand up to the test of time. They're brilliant, still brilliant. And I love the films. I also love the books, and as a book nerd, I can look at the films and I could tear my hair out at the amount of changes they've made. Some of them I think are completely needless. Some of them I completely understand, but I accept that these are two different art forms. In order to make the film work well, in order to make the movies work well, they did have to make some changes from the pure text. And some of them, in terms of Lord of the Rings, most of those changes enhanced it as a visual medium. So I don't think that we should just be looking to be taking the pure text of something and then drop it down and expect it to work as a visual medium. There will have to be changes. That said, if they can do purple eyes, I would like purple eyes. But I'm not as much of a purist. I don't think it has to be exactly right. If they can get it right and if they can get great actors to do stuff, I'm not too worried about all of the details. Lots of questions, lots of points about the eyes. I'm just quickly flicking through the chat. Tom Bombadil, yeah, absolutely. No Tom Bombadil in Lord of the Rings movies. For me, I love Tom Bombadil. I think he's an excellent character, but I entirely understand why, and I will stop this digression in a moment, I promise, but I entirely understand why they didn't have Tom Bombadil, having created this world in the Shire and this lingering threat. The idea of suddenly, the Black Riders come in, there's all kinds of fear, and then suddenly we get this character with this bright yellow clothes, big blue hat, and all the rest of it. Hey do, dilly do. This does not quite work. If you've read the books, you will understand why. It works perfectly in the books. He is a book essential character, but he is not a movie essential character. Okay, so I will now move on to questions from we're talking about Asshai. We got slightly distracted, but we're talking about Asshai. We're talking about the far east of Essos. Dominic Vaughan, is Planetos round? And are these simply two sides of the same coin? Or is this, again, just a cool bit of world building and George R.R. Martin showing us the Chinese whispers effect and creation lore effect as it is disseminated from place to place and changes in the telling slightly? Okay, so the world is almost, Planetos is almost certainly round. George R.R. Martin has confirmed it is a planet. And I don't think we're looking at Discworld. So I think, yes, this is almost certainly round. We do not, however, know how big it is. That's the main issue we have. So we don't know if you head west of Westeros. We know that there's nothing for a long time. But at which point do you hit the other side of Essos? Or is there something in between? These are the questions we simply do not know the answer to. Obviously, the way that George R.R. Martin has kind of set it up seems to imply that as it's sort of vaguely mapped across onto our world, and we get Westeros is sort of vaguely Britain, and then we get sort of Essos, which sort of moves across sort of Europe into Asia and all the rest of it. Does that mean going west we'll get a little bit of an America before you get over to all the way around to the far side of Essos? Do we have further west of Westeros? I don't know. We're not told, and George R. R. Martin, I suspect, is never going to tell us. But it is around. You can, if you head west and keep heading west, then you will almost certainly come back round the other side. And we get the hint of this, obviously, in Fire and Blood. We get Alyssa Farman, who got her amazing boat. She sailed it west as far as she could go. She never came back that way. But we do get an alleged sighting of her in Asshai, which seems to, or her boat at least, which seems to imply that, yes, she headed west and ended up east. Jibberdol, lots of people talking about Tom Bombadil, and a couple of people entirely uncertain about what I was doing there with the little silly song. It's Tom Bombadil's song, which he repeats over and over. Andrew Kay saying, want more Robert singing Lord of the Rings songs. There are lots of Lord of the Rings songs. You do not wish me singing them. Jibberdol saying, hi, Robert. If you could choose one location in the Far East for a POV character to visit, which character would you choose and what city? Well, the character I would choose to visit anywhere new is Tyrion. For the simple reason that Tyrion is the most insightful character out of everywhere. George R. R. Martin writes, and you get this the more you read the POV chapters, the more you understand how he writes not just so we see through someone's eyes, but we understand their thinking as it goes through. So you get to see how different characters work, and we get Cersei. It's all very immediate. It's all, what can I get out of this? Who's hurting me? How can I do that? You get Tyrion. It's very clear. He thinks, he analyzes. Every now and then he stops and thinks back. What's happening here? Why am I going to do that? So I would want Tyrion very much, and I'm currently going through on Twitter, if you're interested in the outcome, going through a reread or re-listen through a Game of Thrones, just making some reflections as I go through each chapter. Tyrion, the most recent chapter I've been doing is when he's up in the Eyrie, and you can see him working his way through, figuring out, okay, so I know that Catelyn Stark won't have stolen my money bag. I know that Maud, the jailer guy, he will want something in writing from me to make, so that he will believe my promises on such and such. I think that I can trust Bronn to step in here and help me. So you can see his mind working through that chapter. So in terms of a character going to anywhere east, it would definitely be Tyrion, because he would analyze everything. And in terms of where Asshai, and for all the reasons that we're going to be coming on to, it is an absolute mystery. There is so much going on there, and we're told so little. Question from, hang on, just trying to find it. Apologies. So here we go. Boris Roscoe. What could be that cause? The cause of the all is poisonous and dark in Asshai? Of course, just speculation. It is just speculation. I have got a couple of questions on this in a bit, Boris. If that's okay, I'm going to wrap this up with that. With those questions, but just in terms of a quick answer to that, what could be the cause of it? I think this is magical. It's not just a normal thing. It seems the more you get to it, it suddenly turns dark for no particular reason. The water is luminous. The walls seem to sink in light seem to suck in light. So this is magical. It's not just a cool place. And that leaves you two options. The first option is that it just happens to be a magical place. I don't buy that. Second option is that something magical happened. So we'll get onto that a little bit later. Abby Ni Longsai saying hi from Stephen and Abby in Limerick, Ireland. Hi there. Do you think there are more living dragons in the Shadowlands past Asshai? Yeah, again, I've got a question on this. I will answer this one now, and I will try and pick up on it again later. Are there more dragons? Possibly. So the area, I'll just, for those who are unaware, Asshai is called Asshai in the shadow, under the shadow, beyond Asshai. It's at the tip of this spit of land, which sort of expands out as you go north and east. And as you go north and east, it's craggy, it's rocky, it's desolate, and the further you go, the less light there seems to be, and that is where, legend has it, all kinds of monsters live. Now, this we're told, and I don't actually believe this, but we're told that this is where Dany's 3 dragon eggs came from the Shadowlands beyond Asshai. The reason why that's important is not that I think that's where they came from. I think they're the ones that ended up in Bravos, but because this seems to be something that people would believe. If you had to make up a place for where dragon eggs came from, you would say the Shadowlands, because people would believe that that's where they are. I don't necessarily think that there are huge amounts of dragons, fully grown dragons over there, for the simple reason that dragons don't just sit in one spot. They range over a huge area. So I don't think that, and we've not had sightings of them. We're not told, in the further reaches of Yi or in Asshai, dragons sometimes pass over. We're not told that, which seems to imply that doesn't happen. So I think it's probably more likely that there may be some smaller dragon kind there. There may also be some dragon eggs, but no huge grown dragons all the way over there. Nicola Juracan, Sartorius is south. This is George R. R. Martin's easy way of understanding where the continents are. We get Westeros in the west, Essos in the east, and Sartorius in the south. Vincent Parisi, thank you very much. Saying, in terms of how religions develop, would be great to see a follow-on series 1,000 years following A Song of Ice and Fire, to see how present characters influence or create religion in the world, i.e. Dany as a messiah. Yeah, that would be fascinating. I don't think we're going to get that. It's the short answer. I don't think that George R. R. Martin is going to write anything in the future. I certainly don't think he's going to. He might give us a couple of hints about what happens next, but I don't think he's going to be looking a long way into the future. I think that the hints are that the characters that were there in the first long night have then been turned into legend. The last hero was Orahai and all the rest of it. And so we might expect, therefore, that the characters in this long night might also similarly be turned into legend. But as I say, that's speculation, and we can't go any further with that, I don't think. Video Game Vision Quest saying, the books have an anti-racist message, so there's no reason the show shouldn't have one as well. 3 cheers for Corliss's casting. Yeah, absolutely. So I would agree with that 100%. Kevin Kind saying, will the mystery of Asshai and what happened there end up being important to the main story in Westeros, or is it just there to add mystery? I don't think it's going to end up important. I sighed because I know that I'm in the middle of doing a live stream about this, and so this is the kind of thing that kind of undermines it. But Asshai is absolutely fascinating, and I think is vital to the background of A Song of Ice and Fire and the story that we have. In terms of the future, I don't think so. And in terms of the story that we're going to have, I think we're going to end up, frankly, in the situation where none of the characters that we know will visit Asshai, and with the exception of a few side characters like Qarth and the like. And its shadow, pun intended, will cast itself quite long over this story, but you will be able to understand the basics of the story without understanding the background that we get from places like Asshai and Yi. That's my general take. So it's not just there to add mystery, it's there to show the added layers that George R. R. Martin has created for his world, and it's to reward the reader who digs in a little bit further, who wants to understand the extra layers, the extra nuance of what is going on. So that's my general take on the world to the far east. Captain Anopheles saying, any connection between the jungle temples of Leng and Southerly? Do you mean Sartorius? I think... my general take on Leng is that George R. R. Martin has written it as a cool thing and a slight hat tip to Lovecraft. but we're not going to see any more of it. The only kind of thing from the story going onwards that I think we're going to get is, and I might have got this wrong, but I think there is a mention of the sort of the Grey Plague, an outbreak of that happening over there, which is grayscale basically, and in the port cities, and that, if it works its way westwards, is going to be a huge issue for the rest of the story. I genuinely think there will be an outbreak of Grey Plague / grayscale in King's Landing before this story is out, before the story is over. Question from Andrew K. I will get on to the oily Blackstone. Do not worry about that. The Giggle Fits, thank you so much, saying all of the eastern land of Planetos are littered with Lovecraft references. So are the Iron Islands in the extreme west. What Lovecraftian nightmare do you think prevents circumnavigation? I don't think there's a Lovecraftian nightmare that prevents circumnavigation. I think it's so the deep ones. And good spot, incidentally. Yes, it's the far east and the far west. It's the deep ones are there as a memory of something that was older than this world that we have. And this is George R. R. Martin adding just another layer to what it is. The story is not just a closed story. The story that we have is built within a world, and the world, not everything contributes to the story that we have. The world, like, slight sidestep and segue here back to something we were talking about before, like Tom Bombadil in The Lord of the Rings. If you were a fan of The Lord of the Rings, Tom Bombadil is not plot he's not plot necessary, let's put it that way. You can, as happened on the movies and the films, you can create the story of The Lord of the Rings without having Tom Bombadil, but he is world necessary. J.R.R. Tolkien created him for a reason. I'm not going to go into all of that now. I did do a video on it if you're interested. I think what you will find is that the things around the echoes of the deep ones are similarly within this world of ice and fire. They are not plot necessary. We can have the plot of the story of A Song of Ice and Fire without any of these mentions of the deep ones and all the rest of it, but they are world necessary. They are allowing us to understand what this world is, and it's not just this story. It is deeper and it's further, and there are things that extend back into history beyond what we have in our limited story. So that's my personal take on it. Lady Pushkins, do you think Quaithe knows about the White Walkers? Yes, I do. I've got a question on who is Quaithe coming up a bit later, which I will cover that and why I think that's the case. Reflective Rambling, thank you for the super chat. Hi there, saying basilisks in Yi Ti. Of the serpent's root they shall come forth, and his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent, frequently paired with lions and or dragons in phrasing. Weasels are enemies. Thoughts? Do I have thoughts on pairing the serpent's root with lions and or dragons? I'm not sure. I to be honest, I'm not sure I entirely understand the question. In terms of the role of Yi Ti, and I'll sort of start opening this up now, because I think this is where we're going to go with this discussion of sort of the Far East, is that the world of Yi Ti and Asshai is the world, the precursor of the world of Valyria and the Valyrians. Now, what that means is that Valyria, as we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, I think, Valyria did a huge amount of work. The Valyrians were all about this kind of gene splicing in modern terminology. They would put together different things in order to create hybrid monsters. Now, we see that in a whole variety of different ways, but the implication, the very, very strong implication, is that the Valyrians themselves, the dragon riders, had a bit of dragon DNA effectively within them, which is what allowed the bonding. Now, you take a step back to go to Yi Ti, you get to Asshai and the empires that were before Valyria. What you see there are the precursors of this, but in the language of legend. So you get people marrying tiger women. We get people with monkey tails. These kind of stories, and we get the old Empire of Geese had the harpies, and we get a huge amounts of manticores coming and things like that coming from the east. All of these are hybrid creatures. So the technology, as it were, the magical technology that the Valyrians mastered, they got from those earlier empires and civilizations. And we get the echo of that through the legends that we have of tiger people and all the rest of it. So that seems to be what's the sort of the iteration of events. So hopefully that answered your question, Reflect Rambling. Apologies for not fully getting it. Mark Adams, thank you so much for the super sticker. Kim Sandberg saying 1,000 ice and 1. This, if in doubt, blame Bloodraven. Absolutely. Lady Pushkin saying, sing it again, Robert. No, I shan't. Lady Gordon, well, wow, Lady Gordon, thank you so much. That's incredibly generous super chat. Saying, hi, Robert, just wanted to send some tangible support. I put my question over on Patreon. Thanks for all your hard work. Well, thank you. I did get your question. I will get to it at some point soon, but thank you. I hugely appreciate that. That's very kind of you. And I think that's me caught up from the chat. So let's go to a few more questions from my patrons. Shashar's asking about what the point is of the places beyond Qarth. Asshai is mentioned, but why Yi Ti, Leng, or the Yogos Nai there? So I think this is sort of building on what I was just saying. These things, I think they serve a dual purpose. Part of that is this background, and we know that George R.R. Martin loves the echoing history that we've got, and so this is providing some sort of an echo back all over to the Far East. That kind of echoing history is there, and secondly, it's making this a world. This isn't just a story about what happens in Westeros and some of the Westerosi people heading over into Essos for a bit, then coming back again. This is the story of a world. This is the story, and we often divert attention away from this. We talk about the seasons being out of. I did a video about this a little while ago because I think it's a huge. It's such a big point that we often miss it when we're coming up with our theories about what's going on in the world of Ice and Fire. The seasons are out of balance. That was the first thing that was said on the back of the first version of the first book. This is the blurb that George R.R. Martin first, before he knew that this was going to be a massive TV show, the world was going to be hanging on his every word. This was the, how do you try and hook people into my new story? A cataclysmic event, a preternatural cataclysmic magical event, has caused the seasons to be out of balance. I may have got the wording slightly wrong there, but that's the feel there. Preternatural magical event has caused the seasons to be out of balance across the whole world. That is the start of this. So if we are looking for a clue to what this story is about, it's what was that event that caused the seasons to be out of balance. So that's where I would go with all of this. And the reason I talked about that is because this is a worldwide story. This is about the entire planet. This is not just in Westeros the seasons are a little bit off. This is the entire planet has been knocked off of its axis. Some magical event changed things absolutely radically. So that's why we're having to see, or not having to see, why George R. R. Martin is giving us so much of the wider world, because this is a story that covers the wider world. Okay. Howland's Little Sister. The tales of Yi Ti are tantalizing and frustrating due to the sparseness of written text. There is so much to know, but definitive facts are fleeting. How much of the history and culture of Yi Ti is admitted to by the peoples of Westeros and others in the more familiar communities of Essos? For such a rich and complex side of the world, not much is acknowledged. No, it's not. And that, as I say, is because it is cut off. There's this mountain range across at the far end of the Dothraki Sea. There's this mountain range that is incredible. Almost no one goes over there. At the bottom of it, we get the Jade Gates. We get Qarth, a very narrow channel through which ships can pass to go over towards Asshai. People very, very, very rarely travel there. Euron, who claims to have been everywhere, he only claims to have been as far as Qarth. He doesn't claim to have gone all the way across to Asshai. We get Lomas Longstrider, who is this, we'll talk about him again a little bit later, but this great traveler that we hear about, this legendary great traveler who saw the world and wrote books about it, even he doesn't get all the way across as far as places like Asshai. What George R. R. Martin is telling us is that people just are not going there. So what we have are stories, things that have passed by. People who have been there have then moved west, and then people who are from Westeros have met them somewhere and have gathered the information that way. So everything we have, pretty much everything, is secondhand. In terms of how much is admitted to, I mean, I think we always have to think in Westeros, we've got the 1%, which is what we're talking about, the rich, the powerful, the literate, and then the small folk. The small folk won't know anything about the world over on the far side of Essos. They might have heard a few legends, but that's about it. In terms of the rich and the powerful, then the Maesters have written a few books about it, and clearly those who wish to investigate have gone there. Marwyn allegedly has been there. And then we also get Aegon V. Egg. He got knowledge from Asshai, which seems to imply that he got people to go over there and gather knowledge and bring it back to help him try to hatch some dragon eggs. So the people know about it, but it is legendary. It is the kind of place that, as I say, almost no one's been there. Corlys Velaryon, I think, didn't even get that far. He got as far as Qarth and came back. This is not a place that people go to. So they believe it exists, but they don't know about it. No one has actually been there. So let's talk about Asshai. I've got a lot of questions about Asshai specifically. Whitney says, "Hi, Robert. By the way, thank you for staying up so late to do these live streams. You're very welcome. They're the highlight of my week. Thank you. My question for you is, if Asshai could be afflicted with some kind of deadly radiation that leaves the water of the river undrinkable and the air poisonous, it is said that any animal that comes to Asshai dies pretty quickly. The river is black and glows in the dark, and the fish in its waters are blind, deformed, and nasty looking. The only thing that seems to grow in Asshai is ghost grass, which again glows in the dark and is inedible. Could this possible radiation also attribute to the lack of children in Asshai? Okay, so what caused Asshai to be like it is? Now, this idea of radiation, I think, is a fascinating one, and it's one that we do have to squarely put our tinfoil hats on for, because we have no information. We literally, we're just coming up with random theories to see whether they might fit. So, George R. R. Martin, what we can construct for this, George R. R. Martin has very clearly got a history in science fiction. He's now known almost entirely for A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, and he did write some pure fantasy stories. Beforehand, Fever Dream, because that was the first time I came across his work. Excellent book, by the way, if you're a fan of vampire novels. Vampires on the Mississippi, great concept. But he wrote sci-fi as much as he did fantasy, and so he has got that background, and it is a trope almost within a lot of fantasy worlds that the fantasy world is actually a post-apocalyptic world in some way. And George R. R. Martin, being hugely well read in fantasy stories, he will know this. You get things like, and no spoilers, but Shannara, the Book of the New Sun, Gene Wolfe, again, excellent. Do go and read that. This idea of this kind of post-apocalyptic world is in lots of fantasy. And I do sometimes wonder whether this is his, because he does so many nods to different bits of fantasy that he loves. I do sometimes wonder whether this is his kind of little nod to that, because it does, we have to say, it does sound like nuclear fallout in a way, with a dark shadow hanging over it all the time, with luminous water, with, I mean, the fish, it just sounds like, you know, deformed fish. This is the kind of thing we think about Chernobyl or something like that. This is very, it feels like it's a nod. I don't think that this is specifically, I don't think it is a post-apocalyptic world. I don't think it is, but I think this is his nod to that. We'll perhaps talk about it a bit more about what happened to Asshai, but this, if anything, this is magical fallout. This, not from a nuclear bomb or something like that. This is magical fallout in an area. The same thing we see, incidentally, in after the doom of Valyria. If you go to the areas near to Valyria, there's a city called Mantaris, which has deformed people apparently in it, which is close to the Valyrian Peninsula, but just about survived. Tobias Gulk. Oh, hi there, Tobias. I got your email. I will. Thank you very much. I will reply to it. In Lovecraft stories, people that glimpse the darkness usually go mad. Qarth and Melisandre don't seem to be mad, maybe misguided. Are there examples of characters that were broken by places like Asshai? Great question. And this is one of those ones I'm probably going to throw to the chat to see if they can think of it. Of any examples. So the fact is, we don't have many examples of people who have been to or claim to be from Asshai. Off the top of my head, I can think of 4. Melisandre, Qarth, Marwyn, and Mirri Maz Duur. Now, all of those are magical characters, and all of those are, in their own way, they keep things hidden. So that seems to be what links them. So it's not, and yes, I completely get the sort of the going mad Lovecraftian thing. I think the Lovecraftian nod is more places like Leng that we were talking about a little bit ago, rather than Asshai. So I think that the link we have for the people associated with Asshai is mystery, is secrets, is them not being all that you see to start with. So that is what we get, and that is literally when you get the face masks, they are hiding themselves. Melisandre is almost certainly hiding who she is. Qarth is almost certainly hiding who she is. Marwyn, it's not so much a matter, I suspect, of him hiding who he is, as he has got a hidden agenda which is different to that of the rest of the Maesters, and obviously Melisandre herself had a bit of a hidden agenda. So that's my general take there. But if there are, if the chat wishes to chime in with some thoughts of people who have been sent mad by Asshai, then that would be fantastic. I'll try and pick them out. Googly Woogly, thank you so much. Incredibly generous, Googly Woogly. Thank you. I really slightly lost for words, but thank you. Very kind super chat saying thanks for upgrading Thursdays week after week. Looking forward to the Qarth portion of today's discussion. Yeah, we will definitely get to Qarth. Googly Woogly, thank you. I hugely appreciate that. And I hugely appreciate being able to say Googly Woogly. I do quite like that. Rocky Nanty are saying if no one has ever been to Asshai, how are the descriptions included? People have been to Asshai, so we get the. I mean, perhaps I've been overstating it in terms of. I mean, I named 4 characters. I think that's the limit on the characters that we know who've been there. We get Alyssa Farman and a few people back in history, but in terms of the current story, I think that's it. There may be more chat do tell me, but it's a very limited number. In terms of the information we get, there's a hub or a few different hubs where people could meet people who have been to Asshai. Now, one of those is Qarth, because Qarth is a sort of the gateway to the Far East and is a port and a trading city. People you will meet if you're in the ports of Qarth, you will meet people who have been from or about to go to Asshai. Similarly, we get Vace Dothrak. You get there are a couple of markets there. There's the Western market, which has got all of the goods from the free cities and the Westeros, and then you get the Eastern market from everything that's going far to the east, places like Asshai. People do come out, but this is a big thing. I think this is the point I'm trying to make, is that this is a big thing to come out from Asshai to go somewhere. If you're going overground, then you're committed, and you want to go back, you're committing a year of your life to do it. This is a lot, and it's not an easy route, and there's a fair chance you might die on the way. Ditto if you're coming out by the sea, then it's a very hard route. So that's the kind of feel that we're trying to get across here. Question from 2 Ravens, just saying perfect timing. Be well. Thank you very much. And yeah, lots of people picking out Alyssa Farman. Almost certainly, we didn't get full confirmation. Her boat seems to have got there. We didn't get full confirmation that she did, but yes, obviously this was a couple of 100 years before the story we have. And yeah, I'm just flicking through to see if anyone's got any other ideas of people who might have been there. Yeah, I think that's it. So I think we have 5 as is the short answer there. 5 people that we know who've been there, which, given the amount of characters that we have in A Song of Ice and Fire, is an incredibly small amount, and none of them do we know huge amounts about. Melisandre appears for a little bit and goes away. Marwyn literally is only there for like a quarter of a chapter before he disappears. Qarth is about as a mysterious character as you're ever going to find. Melisandre is the one who we probably know the most about, and I mean, she's, as George R. R. Martin actually said when he asked, she's the most misunderstood character in A Song of Ice and Fire. He was asked, who is the most misunderstood character? And he said Melisandre. So they've all got some kind of mystery attached to them. Catherine Fursith saying, I wanted to ask about the ruling of Asshai. Do we know if a person or a group rule the city? And also, what is Ashai's relationship or view of the outside world? It seems to be a rather inward-looking city, having enough with its own groups and dealings, living its own secluded life. Is this correct, or does it have a foreign policy? No, it doesn't seem to have a foreign policy. It doesn't seem to operate as a corporate identity as a city. As an intro description, Asshai is huge. Now, we're told that it is, you could drop Qarth, Volantis, Old Town, and King's Landing within it. That's how big it is. When you think of 4 of the largest cities we know could fit within its walls. However, it is almost empty. Only 1 in 10 houses have lights on, we're told. So this is a vast but desolate city. It is dark most of the time. There are no children. There are no animals. It is quiet. People, when they go around, they're often in palanquins with curtains drawn around them, carried by slaves. You don't see their face. Shadow binders cover their face. This is not a vibrant port city. This is a very quiet, secretive city where things on their own. We do not have any record of there being a government there. We don't have a record of there being any kind of foreign policy. We don't know. I mean, maybe there are these things. We just don't have the information on it. But the impression we have is that of an ancient city, largely empty, but dotted around a few people who survive in this ridiculous atmosphere that you can't drink the water. Nothing grows there. Everything, in order to survive, has to be shipped in. There is a lot of access to gold and gems and all the rest of it. And that is why people are willing to sail their ships to Asshai with food and fresh water, and they sell that for gems and gold. That is how valuable it is, because you cannot drink the water, grow your own stuff. So that seems to be how the economy works. We do not know much more than that. There doesn't seem to be anything of an organization there, but people seem to be trained there in some way. Now, whether that is through some sort of college, we're not told. Whether that you have to know a person in order to get trained, again, we're not told. But certainly things seem to be passed down from generation to generation. Question from Roman Lakovets saying, what do you make of Elio's theory that Dawn is the actual Lightbringer that was used by Azor Ahai? If true, then maybe Dawn originated in Asshai instead of being made from a fallen star. Well, I didn't know this was Elio's theory, but if it's Elio's theory, then I would give it great weight. So Dawn being the ancestral sword of House Dane. The legend that they have, we're all the way back to Westeros now, obviously. We will come back to Asshai in just 1 second. The legend that they have is that there was this meteorite smashed into the ground, what is now called Starfall, understandably named island, and from that stone they forged this sword thousands of years ago, which became called Dawn. Now, is pardon me, is Dawn Lightbringer? Well, I think the obvious thing to say here is that if Lightbringer, the sword, from the first time around exists, the only sword we know of that is that old is Dawn, the sword of Housdane. That's the only sword that it could be. So either that sword has the original sword that was there is disappeared over time, or if it has survived, it is almost certainly that sword. Added to which we get all of this kind of imagery. The language just matches up. Lightbringer, Dawn, who holds Dawn, the sword of the morning, and this Lightbringer. They all, it fits together really, really well. So is that, and added to which my I was going to say my islands theory. I refuse to call it a theory. My observation about the islands around Westeros and how they are all ancient and important. Once you get that, then I think it makes a lot of sense. Added to which, the family of Housdane do seem to have some kind of ethnic link, not to the First Men or any of the other people of Westeros, but way back further. So it all makes sense. I like the idea. Did Dawn originate in Asshai instead of being made from a fallen star? I mean, these things are literally legends, and we shouldn't take them too seriously. I think that I like the idea of this fallen star, and that all seems to fit with the names, that's where it came from, and maybe that's where they forged it, but then maybe it went off back far east to be fighting the others there. I don't know. We can't possibly say, but the link is indisputable in my view. Okay, let's go with a question from Lady Dane. Good link across from before. Hi, Robert. It seems to me that Asshai is a bit like the Underworld in Greek mythology, the dark river, the inaccessibility, etc., etc. It is obviously not underground, but what reasons are there for such parallels to death with Asshai? Also, why do there seem to be some people who have gone there and returned alive? This appears to me to be almost mythic rather than realistic. Yes, there are clearly so being under the shadow, and it certainly seems to be you go beyond the shadow or into the shadow. Asshai seems to be like the last. I mean, I wouldn't want to call it the last bit of civilization before you go into the shadow, the sort of the land of death. But Stigai, which is the city of the dead, I think he calls it, which is allegedly where dead people roam, is this place, this city. If you go further in beyond Asshai, deep in to the Shadowlands, this city where it's city of a shadow, because literally for only a few minutes a day, it's got these high cliffs. Only for a few minutes of the day does the sun actually shine in. Most of the time it's in shadow. The feel is that beyond Asshai is death and is the land of the dark, as you sort of say, the underworld. That's the kind of feel, and the way it's described with these sort of huge cliffs and light not coming in does make it feel underground, even if it's not actually underground. So yes, George R. R. Martin, I think, is taking that feel that we've got. In terms of people going there and coming back out, we don't get people going into the Shadowlands. The only people who sometimes go there are the Shadowbinders, and even they do not go to Stigai, we're told. So the actual place of the dead people do not go to and people do not return from. So that's if you're looking for the similarity across the sort of the mythical world, that's where it is. It's not, Asshai is not the land of the dead. Asshai is the gateway to the land of the dead. Jack of Hearts saying, "Hi Robert, if only 1 in 10 houses have lights on in Asshai, then what was the terrible disaster that befell the place to darken the other 9? Great question. We're getting there. Eric Ferg saying, "Why is Asshai so immense with such a little population and no children or animals?" I think this is entering the realms of, I mean, it's sort of tinfoil, but it's trying to extrapolate backwards. The fact that we had a massive city seems to imply, and full disclosure, and this isn't my original thinking. This, I think, if you want the full details of this, I did a live stream ages ago with Aziz from A History of Westeros, and coming out from that, you might want to check out an essay from Durrandon and LML, and then a video from History of Westeros and LML, looking at the links between the Great Empire of the Dawn and Asshai. So if you want all of the detail building up to that, do go and check those original things. I will set out what I have taken for me as the headline points, because my take is not so much the mythological symbolic stuff going on there, but what this might mean for the plot. So my takeaways from that: Asshai was a massive city, still is a massive city, an ancient city. It's built with oily black stone that we will come on to in a moment, but is almost certainly, among many other things, a symbol of something ancient. Now, if you have a city that huge, the clear implication is that that is linked with a huge empire or something along those lines. And we have this great empire of the Dawn, which seems to have, according to legend, lasted for thousands of years. Now, what caused the downfall of the great empire of the Dawn? We're told basically this coincided, and we get the legends where we get the Bloodstone Emperor, who came in and basically was a usurper, and that led, he was a baddie basically, and that led to the Long Night. That's what their sort of origin story for the first Long Night was. There are echoes of the story of the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, it has to be said, all the way over into the north of Westeros. Now, what we're told is that following on from that, there was the Long Night, and this seems to have lasted a long time. But then the hero came, and this had a number of different names over in the Far East. The one that we remember is Azor Ahai, which is a Far East legend. This isn't a Westerosi legend. This is a Far East legend. Azor Ahai, flaming sword, and sorts it and deals with it. We're not told of the details, but then defeats the ravenous hordes that come from the north and the east. And after that, the Great Empire of the Dawn collapses. So what can we sort of draw as a kind of conclusion from this? So an empire that sort of collapses in on itself after the Long Night, perhaps it was just that the empire, the reason why Asshai is mostly empty, perhaps it was just the empire that it was the capital of, or the biggest city of, or whatever, just collapsed. But that doesn't explain all of the dark stuff, the darkness and the luminous water and all the rest of it. My best guess is that some huge magic took place in order to try and push back the forces of darkness, and that had an impact on the world. Now, we have this kind of cycling back to where we were talking about before. There was a preternatural magical event that somehow created or caused the seasons to go out of balance. Might this be the thing that did it? Whatever it was, it will have had an impact, not just in terms of the sort of putting the globe on a bit of a wobble or whatever's technically happening, but also in the world that we have. Might that be what happened? Why this part of the world is so blighted, so horrible, with all the shadow grass that has these legends that it will spread across the world, why there's always eternal darkness there. It's possible. It's possible that some magic happened there. Whether that actually was what ended the long night, we do not know. This is all back in legend. But that, for me, is something, the building blocks that we have, and we cannot go further than the building blocks, although we could speculate on them based on symbolism, whatever. But building blocks are that the Great Empire of the Dawn, whatever that was, existed. Then the long night happened at the same time, perhaps causing a changeover in leadership, rulership of the Great Empire of the Dawn. And Asshai was once a great city, thriving, magnificent and huge, but then descended into darkness and was just a literal shadow of its former self. Those are the building blocks we have, and you can try and draw your lines between those things, but I think they have to be connected in some way. Okay, I hope, Jack of Hearts, that sort of answered your question. Also, Eric Fogg, yours. Pardon me, Sylvia Galasso saying, "Ciao, Robert. Ciao. Do you think there are still dragons somewhere in Asshai?" I think I covered that one off a little bit ago. I think the short answer is not Asshai. Beyond Asshai in the Shadowlands, perhaps not fully grown dragons, I suspect, or we would have had reports of them flying around, but perhaps some proto-dragons of some kind. J Kelsey 55, thank you for the super chat, saying, "Howdy. Any thoughts on why Qarth is shrinking? The outer two of the three walls no longer are manned, enclosing the city proper. Is there something rotten in Qarth?" Yeah, so Qarth, we have to look at it in terms of its wider history, I think. So Qarth is the last city in a wider empire, the Qarthine Empire, that was slowly destroyed and pushed back to just one city, which is Qarth. Now, they survived, and they have prospered by looking outwards to the sea rather than to the land. Why is it that the walls, the outer walls, are deserted? I mean, if this is pure speculation, but based on the information we have, is that they are not expecting attack from the land. For hundreds of miles, extending out in every direction from where they are landwards, is the Red Waste. They know that the Dothraki are not about to attack across the Red Waste because they can't. They literally can't. They're a horse-based culture. There is nowhere for them to graze their horses on that ground. So that, as an army, they're not going to come across. Who else is possibly going to be an enemy? The other big cities around there, in Slavers Bay, Marine, Astapor, Yunkai, they are allies in the slave trade. They're not going to attack them. Then you get the mountain range, which is cutting them off from the east of the far east of Essos. they do not feel a threat from the land. They did when they built the city walls. They did because one after another, the other cities in the Qarth civilization were destroyed. They did feel that threat, but now, no, they do not. They are spending their money on wonders and beauty within the Queen of Cities, as they like to call it, the city itself. So that, I think, is the reason why. I don't think it's shrinking. I think it's doing well as a city, on the back of some, slave trade and things like that. So we shouldn't slap them on the back too much. But I think that they do not think that they're about to get attacked from the land. Question from CB Norwood saying, Melisandre is purported as both a priestess of Ralore and a shadowbinder of Asshai by the shadow. Which of her demonstrated abilities stem from which practice? Well, we don't have a clear delineation, it has to be said. We're not told what the priests of Ralore can do, and we're not told what shadowbinders can do, but we have some hints. So the reading the flames does seem to be a Ralore thing. So seeing visions in the flames. Now, Melisandre is exceptional at seeing things, seeing things in the flames, seeing visions in the flames. She's terrible at interpreting them, but that certainly seems to be a thing, magic trick, whatever you want to call it, from that she's learned from the worship of Ralore. The shadow stuff that she does, shadow babies, for example, seems to be a shadow binding. Now, we get this from her POV. She sees a connection between the two. She doesn't see this as a sort of I've got this from here, that from there. She sees this as a connection between the two, because you get the Lord of Light creates shadows. So she doesn't think of shadows as being a bad thing. She thinks of the Lord of Light creates shadows, therefore shadows are part of the realm of the Lord of Light of Ralore. So she sees this as all together. And personally, and I will at some point do a video on my grand unifying theory of magic in the world of Ice and Fire, but personally I think that all magic seems to be operating on the same principles. So she may well have learned one thing from over here and another thing from over there, but it seems to be working on the same principles as far as I can tell. And also, it's not just her who uses different kinds of magic. There are other people. Miri Mazda, actually, a lot of the people we've been talking about, Miri Mazda seems to have picked up different kinds of magic from different kinds of places. Similarly, Marwyn seems to have. So we get people who use different kinds of magic. So the fire things are Ralore, the shadow things are Asshai, but she sees them as being part of the same. Lady Pushkins saying, hi Robert, what truth do you think Daenerys will find in Asshai? And Lady Gordon saying, hi Robert, the best to you and the gorgeous Dan, that's Dan my dog, saying, I personally don't think Dany will go to Asshai now that George R.R. Martin has decided not to do the 5-year gap, but it would seem like he must do something at least with Qarth. Just dropping her is probably too clumsy after all the times she has visited and advised Dany. Do you think we will see her again, or just hear about something that just happened to her, possibly involving her returning to or disappearing to Asshai? Okay, so in terms of the truth, so this is something that Qarth, this mysterious figure, a shadowbinder, we know from the lacquered mask, so she comes from Asshai. She continually talks to Dany about to go west you must go east and all the rest of it, finding truth in Asshai. Now, Lady Gordon, I agree with you completely that we are not now going to go to Asshai. I dug out the quote. This is George R.R. Martin, who has changed his tune on this. But he was asked, this is back in 2011, I think, saying, he was asked, will we ever see Asshai or the Shadow? And George R. R. Martin said, you may hear about it and you may get flashback scenes from characters who have been there and you can puzzle it out on the internet, but I don't know. I may return to write other stories set in this world. Which seems to be him saying, no, we're not now going to go to Asshai in this story. The plan originally seems to have been, when he was starting to think about all this, is that Dany would go all the way over to Asshai. But because he is this Gardner writer and he sort of follows the character and the plot rather than plotting it out at the very beginning, he changed his mind on it. The 5-year plan, the 5-year gap that you talk about, was his original plan to have this gap partway through the story to allow the younger characters to grow up, to allow the dragons to grow, and the suggestion was that perhaps he would get Dany to Asshai and then she would spend some time learning things there while her dragons grew, and then she would sort of come back from there. But that wasn't where George R. R. Martin went. He abandoned the 5-year gap idea, and from what he said, I think it's reasonably clear, we are not going to go to Asshai anymore, which kind of leaves him with this square he has to circle plot-wise, is that having built up the idea of Asshai, which he did, and the fact that Dany's going to get some truth from Asshai, how is that going to work? I think the Qarth is the answer here. He has kept going with Qarth. She could have just been a mysterious character who sort of appeared and then said a few things and then disappeared. But he's kept her coming back as this person who guides her, as this person who is not just guiding her in some kind of mysterious way, but is very, very clearly wanting her to go to Westeros and wanting her to be a Targaryen. The dragons know who you are, do you? This kind of thing. So she is absolutely pushing her to be going to reclaiming her Targaryen inheritance, to become more Targaryen-y, to become fire and blood, and to go off to Westeros and invade it. So that seems to be what Qarth's mission is. And I think the way that George R. R. Martin is going to square that circle about Asshai is by very strongly aligning Qarth with Asshai and having her advice and wisdom being the truth that Dany must get from Asshai. Qarth has come from Asshai. Dany gets the truth from Asshai. That is how that's going to be sort of sorted out. So, Lady Pushkins, I hope that sort of answers that bit of what truth is she going to get. The truth is who she is, and what her role is and where she should be going. We have to remember in all of this that this is Qarth who has got an agenda, trying to tell Dany what to do, persuade her what to do. So when we're talking about the truth that she must learn there, this is truth in inverted commas. This is what Qarth wants her to believe the truth is. And Qarth's idea is to persuade Dany of the truth of who she is. Okay, let's get... I think I might have just missed a question. Fletcher Reed saying, what did the warlocks in Qarth plan to do with Dany's dragons? Did they plan to study them or to conquer Qarth and other places? They wanted to capture them. The exact ideas are not made entirely clear, but the point around, so in the Clash of Kings and Qarth, much is made of the fact that the birth of the dragons has brought magic back to Planetos. Now, it's not quite that clear-cut, it would appear, but certainly, again and again, we get these references we get told. Qarth again says, there's this guy who was doing fire magic in the marketplace, and he used to be really rubbish, but now he's great, creating sort of fire ropes that he sort of climbs up and all the rest of it. And then we get the glass candles are now burning once more, and we get the warlocks are starting to regain their power. So they want the point was that the rebirth of the dragons was the rebirth of magic. That was the theme running through that part. And the warlocks wanted in on that action. They didn't want Dany sort of going off with her dragons. They wanted to own those dragons. James Sledge saying, of all the places we hear about but never go to in A Song of Ice and Fire, Asshai is the one that fascinates me the most. It's impossibly ancient Lovecraftian city that is inhabited by humans, which makes it rather irresistible. I believe George R. R. Martin indicated at one point Dany was going to Asshai, but now no longer thinks he will. Yeah, as I said a moment ago, he's pretty much clarified that that's the case. My question: what would you like to have seen and learned about Asshai from any of the chapters spent there? What questions are you most curious to have answered about Asshai by George R. R. Martin? So in terms of what I want from Asshai, I think I just need to walk around the city and to know if it's like the legends. I think that getting the ancient history is probably a little bit too much, even if we did go there, the ancient history about what happened. But just to experience it and to see inside some of those houses, because there are magic users. And I think that the point is that it's not just about the city itself, which would be impressive, but it's the people who are there and the knowledge they have and the skills, the magic that they can pass on to people. That is the thing that we're kind of missing out on. And George R. R. Martin has substituted the visit to Asshai with having characters who have been in Asshai, who can then provide us with that magic and that knowledge and that wisdom, the Marwyn and Qarth and people like that. You also asked where the oily black stone originates from, which I think I've got some more questions coming up, so I will pick up on that then. Ariel Winchester saying, hello, Robert. Hope all is well. Hi there. I wanted to say thank you. After listening to content creators such as yourself and Grey Area, I've started reading the books. Just finished A Clash of Kings. That makes me really happy. I'm so delighted that I can play my part in inspiring people to read these fantastic stories. So great. I'm really pleased about that. Questions. So, do you believe it was people from the Shadow by Asshai who taught the Valyrians how to control and ride dragons? And if they did teach the Valyrians, why? I have a small tinfoil theory that maybe the people from Asshai taught the Valyrians in order to help protect the world from the next long night, but the Valyrians went power hungry. Thoughts? Yeah, so I've covered the first part of that, I think, already, in terms of I think the knowledge of how to create these kind of gene spliced beings and by implication create the bond with the dragons. I think that did originally come from Great Empire of the Dawn, Asshai, and all the rest of it, which is why the link across to maybe there's dragons even in the Shadow beyond. Did they train, and this is the tinfoil theory you say, did the people in Asshai train the Valyrians to be dragon riders in order to protect future generations against the return of the Long Night? I mean, I love this idea. I don't think we will ever know an answer to this one, but I love this idea that perhaps there was some kind of intentionality. What certainly seems to be the case is that we get the religion, as we said, Ralore seems to have come out from that, and this feeling that fire is important. And the identification, and this is, again, we have to kind of just draw these kind of tacit lines between things and go, well, that kind of implies such and such. But the identification of Daenerys as being Azor Ahai reborn, which has happened by the Temple of Ralore in Volantis, which is effectively the center of Ralore worship. Melisandre is a rogue priest. Ignore her. She's off on her own thing. She does not represent the main worship of Ralore. The main worship of Ralore, the institutions, the high priest, Benero, has identified Dany as being the person that they think will lead to the fight. Now, why her? Yes, she's sort of burned a swathe of conquering freedom and destruction across Essos. She is clearly the most impressive, in many ways, individual in Essos at the moment. But there does seem to be more than it. Obviously, she's got the dragons, but are we to say then that the link between the dragons, who appear to have a link across to Asshai, and the faith of Ralore, which appears to have links back to the first Long Night, does that link together at the very beginning? Quite possibly. Are there some legends to do with Azor Ahai, to do with dragons? Almost certainly yes, because Melisandre goes to Dragonstone because of stone dragons being brought to life. There's something to do with dragons and Azor Ahai. We just do not have the actual written down prophecy, legend, whatever it is. These things are linked. George R. R. Martin has not given us all the links, but he has given us enough to trace the lines back and through. So to put that down in some kind of sensible-ish order, the Religion of Ralore emerged from the Long Night as a memory of how to defeat the others. How they were defeated in the first place, Azor Ahai myth, is to do with a fiery sword and probably has something to do with dragons. It definitely has something to do with fire. Dragons and fire and shadows have a connection across to Asshai. This all seems to imply it comes back from that very, very early moment. So that's the kind of the link that we've got going on here. We can't say any of this categorically, but it is clearly hinted at in the text that we have. Okay. Mara Lee saying, since the people who reside in Asshai require fresh water and foodstuffs to always be shipped in, how do you think they're able to store it for usage when needed? How does anyone manage in such a harsh environment? So the short answer is they have continual shipments coming in because it's worth it. Because if you go in there with fresh water and food, you can sell it for huge amounts, and people do not want to go. I mean, why would anyone want to go to Asshai? Because you get huge amounts of money from it. That's why people, you buy things that are relatively cheap in the outside world, you go into Asshai, you sell them for a stupid amount of money and gems and all the rest of it, and you go back out. You do not want to go back, but you have made your fortune. So there is this steady stream of ships coming in. It's not clear, we don't have the information, whether if you have fresh water it will go off in Asshai, but what is clear is that the people who are there are magic users, and so if anyone can preserve stuff, it's them. George R. R. Martin often comes back to this when we can't try and come up with rational explanations for something. It's a magical world, he says. I think that's the answer in Asshai, is that yes, they require a constant stream of provisions coming in, but they're very magical there. J. Kelsey 55, thank you again, saying, hi Robert, if you had to live in a city or location east of the three cities, where would you pick? Assume there is no language barrier. Oh dear. I mean, this is tough. Probably somewhere in UT. It's one of the things. I mean, UT is the China analog. In that world, we're told very much clearly, they were the foundation of civilization, of writing, of lots of other things. So yes, it's an empire which is divided and often at war, but there seem to be some really nice places there. So I would probably live there. I definitely wouldn't want to live in Asshai. Leng sounds like it might be absolutely beautiful, but I think I would just not want to be anywhere near where the deep ones might be. And Qarth, a little bit too slave centric for my tastes. So yeah, let's go with Yi. Okay, let's go to a question from Eric Ferg saying, why do the Shadowbinders hide their faces behind lacquered masks? Does the magic disfigure them? So I think that part of this is to symbolically show the mystery of the people who come from Asshai. So it's that, and we get it. So with Qarth, we do not know who she is. She has got this layer of mystery and all the rest of it. And so I think as a story device, as a plot device, a character device, that is what we've got going on, is just this hiding of someone. Melisandre is also probably hiding something, but she, rather than having the lacquered mask, has got her pearl choker necklace, not pearl, ruby choker. So that seems to be what's going on there. Does their magic disfigure them in some way? Well, I think living in Asshai might definitely have an impact on you in the long run, but I don't think it's necessarily that, because they do different types of magic, so it's not that they do a type of magic that disfigures them. I think what we've got is the magic that you do in Asshai is often frowned upon, so people do not wish to be identified as being. I mean, you can see that they come from Asshai, but you do not know who they are because they've got the lacquered mask on. Question from, hang on, where am I at? Question from a reflective rambling. This is, I think you're picking up something from Jack. Thank you very much. Saying, what are your thoughts on Ashai's historical relationship with Yin? So Yin is I wasn't going to go there, so I've not done all of my research on this. So Yin is a city in Sothorios. Now, Yin is an ancient city. So Sothorios is the continent to the south, and it's one that we have even less information about than sort of the far east of Essos. The world of ice and fire just has passing references to it, so we don't get huge amounts. But it it's sort of in the jungle. It's a great city. I think it has, again, these oily black stones. It has sort of ape-like creatures there, and it seems to have been from a fallen civilization. Now, people have tried to repopulate it, but no one has survived. So the question was, what's the link between Asshai and Yin. I mean, the link is the oily black stone. Now, I did have a question from, who was it who was asking about the oily black stone? James Sledge was asking about the oily black stone. So I'll just sort of, and at some point I will do a full video on the different types of black stone, because I think there's a lot of confusion about what the different types are, because they're not all the same. There appear to be at least two, probably at least three different types of black stone. We've got the basalt, which seems to be just black stone, which is where the Moat Cailin and some places like that are built from. Then we get a sort of fused black stone, and that fused black stone is in the Valyrian roads and the Black Walls of Volantis, also in places like the High Tower and the Five Forts. It's not clear whether they're all exactly the same, but certainly the Valyrians did this by dragonfire fusing blocks of black stone together. Then we get oily black stone, and it's got slightly different descriptions, but it seems to all to be the same. And we get a few examples of that. One, as you say, is in Yin. One is in Asshai, where the walls of the city seem to be made out of this. Also, we get the sea stone chair, and the Iron Island seems to be made from this. Now, what is the link between these places? I mean, we're given so little information, and I know people have many, many theories about this. These theories are all based on very, very little information. What we can say is they're all ancient. That's beyond dispute. They are ancient to the point at which you do not know who made them. And the legends are certainly, in some cases, like the sea stone chair, that this sort of came fully formed or came from magical other beings. So what is the link? I think it has to be that this is to a culture beyond or earlier than anything that we even have legends of. The Great Empire of the Dawn, perhaps that's what it is, but maybe it's something even earlier than that. The existence of the old ones, the deep ones, or the legends of them, seem to imply that there is something that exists even beyond the histories that we've been told. So that's where the kind of link that we have is. Andrew K saying, yeah, the curious part about the oily stone in Asshai is that it's so huge there had to be an enormous amount of that stone available. Is it a corrupted version of another black stone? Possibly. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's as good a theory as any that I've come across. So the black stone in Asshai, the whole thing seems to be made from this oily black stone. So you either this was just the common material in the area, or it is a sort of a blackened and blasted thing after some great tragedy, that all was left was this oily black stone. It used to be something bright and shiny and white, and then got turned black. I don't know. Those are the two clear options we've got. Jamie McKenna, thank you so much, saying hola. So Robert the Scholar White, thank you very much. Haven't been able to catch a live stream in ages, so I just wanted to show some love for you and Dan. Any plans to have guests on again soon? Cheers and carry on. Well, cheers to you, Jamie. Yeah, I'm hoping to get guests back on again. I've been really enjoying doing these solo ones. I've been doing them solo now for, I don't know, a year or so. But yes, I'd very much like to get back into having guests on at some point soon. Perhaps when I start getting into Lord of the Rings stuff, which I will be. that might be an opportunity for me to start getting a few extra guests on, introduce you to some of the wonderful content creators we have in the wider world of Tolkien. Yeah, that's entirely possible. I will. I like doing the solo live streams. It gives me a chance to rattle through a lot more questions whenever you have a guest on, and it's a lot more to and fro, obviously. But having a guest on provides a different perspective, and that's something that I'm very keen to emphasize. I know I do not have a monopoly on knowledge and wisdom on this. Yes, I study these things a lot, but other people have some fantastic insights too, that may well, even in some areas, exceed my own knowledge and expertise, and I would love to share that with you. So yes, I hope that I will be able to, which is a good moment just to say, in terms of, I was going to say, in terms of future plans, thank yous. That's where I'm going to go. Patreon, my patrons, I always thank you partway through these live streams. I always mean it. I cannot do what I do without your support. Thank you so much. If you would like to support this channel, if you like to support the kinds of things that I do, I've got lots of exciting plans, I think, coming up over the course of the next few months. I will start trailing them for you very soon. But if you'd like to support this, if you'd like to get access to some of the stuff I do just for my patrons, there's some specific patron benefits, then please do check out the link to my Patreon page down in the description. Thank you very much. So question from... where are we at? Eric Ferg saying, what does Melisandre's true form actually look like? Does she have red flame slave tattoos on her face? HBO made her true form look ancient, but I don't understand how all the sexual relations with Stannis work with a decrepit body that is glamoured. Yeah, I don't understand myself all of the intimate details of how a glamour works and how much of the body is changed. Suffice to say that the outer appearance certainly seems to be completely changed. And hey, it's a world of magic. In terms of Melisandre's true appearance, the slave tattoo, with the red flame slave tattoo, is a really interesting point. So when we get Melisandre's POV chapter, and we have one POV chapter from Melisandre. She remembers a slave auction, being a young child, Mel, the young child on the slave auction. The clear implication, given the fact that we're told that the temples of Ralore buy slaves and then sort of bring them into the temple and train them up to do various things, is that she was bought by a temple, and then they spotted her talent, raised her to be a priestess of Ralore, and it went from there. All of the, certainly in places like Volantis and extending a little bit further as well, the slaves all got tattoos on their faces of whatever it was that they were a slave of. So Patchface is an example. He obviously has patches on his face tattooed there because he was a clown. He was a court jester, effectively, and they tattooed that onto his face, hence Patchface. If you are taken by the Temple of Ralore, then you have a flame tattooed on your face. So that's where that comes from. And yes, it seems likely, given what we're told, it seems likely that she has got a flame tattooed on her face, but it's glamoured away. Does she look old? Is she old in real life? Well, she, again, her memories, and the way that she talks seems to imply that she is a lot older than she looks. How much older, we do not know. But if I had to guess, then yes, she is an older person, much older than her physical appearance. And she has indeed got a flame tattoo on one cheek. Question from J Lord. Thank you so much. Saying, what if Asshai is so far from Westeros, everything we have heard about it is wrong? Yeah, it's certainly a risk. I think that a lot of what we've heard about it is wrong. But as I say, we were counting, and I think we came up with 4 characters in the story that we have that are either from Asshai or have been to Asshai, and we have people who have met people who have been there. So I don't think everything we know is wrong. I think possibly, the details, the extent of it. I mean, it's the kind of thing. The legend of Asshai may be exaggerated, but I don't think that we're in a world of nothing. Of what we heard is correct. Asshai, by the shadow, is its full name, which seems to imply that the shadow is there. Yes, maybe it's not quite as terrible or horrific as we're told, but there is certainly going to be a hint of truth in that. Mara Lee, hi there, Mara. Thank you so much for the super sticker. That's very kind, Mara. Thank you for the super sticker. I hugely appreciate that. And questions from Julia Erickson saying, hi, Robert. I hope everything is well. Thank you. I'm a bit curious to hear about why you think the Valyrians first tamed dragons and not the Great Empire of the Dawn. I think you mentioned this on the Valyria live stream. I always took the fused black stone as a hint that they could also control dragons during the Dawn Age. At least it is the only way to make fused stone that we know of. Also, to me, dragons almost seem like an essential part of fighting the others, which makes me think that they must have been able to control dragons the last time around. But those are just my thoughts. I'm curious to hear what you think. Yeah, so I think I've covered off most of this already. But just to sort of clarify, I don't think that Asshai and the Great Empire of the Dawn are necessarily separate entities. They are both clearly very, very ancient. And perhaps Asshai, as I say, I referenced that theory that Asshai was the capital or main city of the Great Empire of the Dawn. Even if it wasn't, even if it was just its own city, then I think everything suggests that it is also very, very ancient, as was probably around at the same time. And Asshai has the stronger links across to dragons than the Great Empire of the Dawn. But I think it's all one and the same, is my general view on that. And Morally, you were asking, as you're there in the chat, you were asking about comparing and contrasting the Azor Ahai myth from Essos with the myth in Westeros. This is sort of round up all of this stuff. Azor Ahai is the Essosi myth, and parts of that seem to have come across over to Westeros, but the Westerosi myth of what happened and the hero is the last hero. Now, we get different kind of versions of it. When we get this in the World of Ice and Fire, when they're talking about Azor Ahai, it's just one of a number of names for this hero. And we get the idea of I think it was Hercune was the guy with the flaming sword, actually, rather than Azor Ahai. Melisandre clearly conflates them and has him as the person with the flaming sword. Then we get the other legend that the well-read within Westeros, people like Tyrion have clearly heard about Azor Ahai. That bit of the legend is about the creation of Lightbringer. So all of this seems to have been the linking thing seems to have been this sword. how it was forged, what it would look like. The last hero, incidentally, also has a sword there, and we get broken sword imagery going on there. But this idea that the character, the person who led this fight against the others the first time around, had some sort of magical sword is very clear all the way across. And it does seem to be this monomyth idea that George R. R. Martin is trying to give us, that different cultures have different stories that are all reflective of one truth. Then the truth is not exactly like any of these different stories or myths, but they all have hints and shards of that one truth in them. Okay, let's move to sort of wider Asshai kind of things. Sassak saying, "Hey, Robert, and you did indeed get it just before the buzzer this time over on Patreon, saying, in A Clash of Kings, it is mentioned that the glass candles are burning in the home of Urthon Nightwalker in Qarth. Do you agree with the theory that this man is actually Euron Greyjoy? If so, do you think it's odd that he was technically in Qarth while Dany and co were there? Perhaps it's just because George R. R. Martin hadn't decided what to do with him yet. But it would have been interesting to have him try to interact with her while she was there." Okay, so for those who are unaware of this, in Clash of Kings, Book 2, Dany is in Qarth, and I think it's just a passing mention. I think it's literally only mentioned the once. When, as I was saying, one of the big themes of that is that the dragons have reawakened magic, and we get this throwaway line, as I noted, that exactly, it says, "It is said that the glass candles are burning in the house of Urthon Nightwalker that have not burned in 100 years. And that's it. That's the only mention we have of him. Why is there this theory that this is Euron? Because of history over in the Iron Islands with the Kingsmoot. The Kingsmoot hasn't happened for a long time, and so when it does happen, they go back to legends of what has happened to it in the past. And the main story they have is Urthon, who won this famous Kingsmoot, and he won because someone was absent. But he ruled only for like 2 years, and he was a bit of a crazy person. And there are echoes of Euron's story in his story. So people go, okay, so if we have Urthon there, does that mean that this is also Urthon in Qarth at this time? Because Euron around then was sort of sailing around to and he says he went as far as Qarth, he said. There's also this idea of glass candles, and the glass candles allow you to see across great distances and communicate, and Euron certainly seems to have, there are many hints that he has this ability to see stuff that's happening a long way away. So there's lots of hints. I'm not selling this particularly strongly for reasons I'll explain in just a moment. But if you are interested in it as a theory, you can just Google it, and there are people out there on Reddit and the like who have developed this and come up with a reasonable amount of evidence for it. Do I think that it's right? Do I think that was Euron? I mean, probably not. I think this is probably just a guy called Urthon, and George R. R. Martin used the same name elsewhere. The idea that Euron could have settled down in Qarth and made his name known there doesn't really fit. the glass candles, we're told, have not burned in 100 years. So it appears that, you know, Arathon is this established figure, and certainly the glass candles which are there in this home have been there in that home for 100 years. It doesn't quite, for me, fit this idea of this raider character who seems to have very itchy feet, always wanting to move on to the next thing. Euron does not seem the person to settle down in Qarth for a long time. He doesn't even talk about going to Qarth. He talks about capturing a vessel that came from Qarth. So I don't think so. I don't think it adds to the story in any way. I think that there are many other explanations for Euron's ability to be able to, apparent ability to be able to see and understand what's happening far away without glass candles, and just he may even have a glass candle. He's got so many other magical artifacts. That does not mean that he is a particular character in a throwaway line in Qarth, in my view. And Sassak, last time around, it sort of vaguely fits in. Again, you did ask a question I missed out about the perfumed seneschal and who that is. This is in one of Quaith's sort of obscure things that she said to Dany. She says, "Beware the perfumed seneschal." So who is that? I think you're asking. It could be a lot of people, and it could be Resnak, who is a perfumed seneschal in Meereen. It could be the boat which carried Tyrion to her. It could be Varys, who is also a perfumed seneschal. It could be any or all of those things. Now, I think that the point here is that Dany is supposed to be on guard. Quaith, we have to, with all of Quaith's utterances, we have to ask not just what is the truth of this, but what is it that she is trying to guard Dany against? She is trying to guard Dany against anything which will hold her back from being truly Targaryen-y. Now, all of those things that we've just mentioned could. Resnak is very much this kind of oily politician who will help her in Meereen to be the person that she wants to be, governing Meereen. Should she beware him? Yes, she should beware him. If you are Quaith, you do not want her settling in Meereen, you want her going out. Should she beware Tyrion? Well, Tyrion, I suspect we will find he may well come on her side, but he will be trying to temper her more fire and bloody kind of impulses. Would Quaith want to be advising to beware of him? Absolutely. Varys is at the moment championing young Griff, Fagon. Should she be wary of him? Absolutely. So I think this is one of those things that it is just Quaith is putting something in Dany's mind that she has to be aware of, not just one thing, but lots of things that and people which could be holding her back from what she should be in Quaith's view, which is more Targaryen-y. J. Lord, thank you so much, saying the Starks were better dressed in the books, wearing a lot of white velvet and silver. This and their grey eyes, to me, ties them to the Pearl Emperor, who I think is their ancestor. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not really the expert on sort of the clothing element of it. This is where we need someone like Costume CO Heidi, who's excellent at this. I will have her back on the channel at some point. But in terms of the link from them across to the Pearl Emperor is one I should probably clarify. In the Great Empire of the Dawn, they had a series of emperors, and each of these emperors had the name of a precious jewel, and it's sort of like that descended, and like the first was the greatest, and each of them was slightly less powerful and slightly less brilliant. And so the pearl does that thematically link across to the Starks and what they wear? Yes, it does. I would absolutely agree. Does that necessarily imply a link across to the Pearl Emperor. I think probably not necessarily. My best guess is that humanity did start somewhere over in Essos and spread across. So the first men, as we consider them, probably did come from the sort of Essos or the Far East at some point. We know that they crossed over that land bridge to invade Westeros, but they probably started further off in the east of Essos. Might the link be there? It's possible, but we simply don't have any evidence to go with it. But I like the idea, and I think it's the kind of thing that we could certainly build things off of in terms of a lot of great theories. Abby Niloingsai saying, "Oh, hang on, you're now telling me how to pronounce this." Niluinshig. Apologies for mispronouncing it. My name means daughter of the shipbuilder in Irish. Well, my Irish pronunciation, I'm sure, is pretty poor, but that's a great name, daughter of the shipbuilder. Excellent. And apologies in advance if I say your name again and mispronounce it again. One of my greater failings in this. But Dany's dragons were likely born because of the others' return. So the others probably instigated the return of magic. Thoughts? Interesting. So the Dany's dragons, George R. R. Martin has confirmed, were born of a unique set of circumstances. Now, they were born of the Valyrian fire and blood magic. There was sacrifice. Everywhere you look, there was sacrifice. Obviously, Mirri Maz Dur was killed in there. Drogo, this was Drogo's death pyre. His horse, his stallion, was sacrificed. There was also the death of Rhaego, Dany's child. And also, this is something I only noticed on my reread through recently. One of the dragon eggs, I'm looking to see whether this happened when they're the other ones, but when Dany hits Viserys with, she has a bronze belt and she whacks him when he's sort of being violent towards her in self-defense, and his blood drops on a scarf, and then she uses that scarf to cradle one of the dragon eggs, and it's the dragon egg which will be Viserion's dragon egg, so Viserys's blood on Viserion's dragon egg, and then she feels movement at that time when she's sort of cradling the egg, and it's this is king's blood on there. So another element to be adding into this, but we have all of that, and we have intentionality. Dany meant to have clear intention at this point was to hatch the dragon eggs, and we get the red comet, which she sees as she looks up before she does this. She sees the red comet, and magic seems to come from above, seems to be connected to the red comet within this world of ice and fire. So that seems to have been the unique confluence of events that allowed the dragon eggs to hatch. The what you're saying about the others causing this, I don't think it's quite that clear a line of causality. The others had been around for a while, probably 40 years or so by this point at least, maybe even longer. They'd been moving, and so I don't personally think there's this clear link across there, except for the fact that there does seem to be this, again, one of these kind of principles of magic within the world of Ice and Fire, that there being magic there already allows more magic to happen. So when Dany's dragons are hatched, then other magic seems to be sort of boosted. When Melisandre is at the wall, which is just this long magical line, she finds that her magic there is boosted. So it seems as if you have a big bit of magic, other bits of magic also get these bits of the boosts going along. The real question behind all of this is what caused the others to return, and that much bigger question, not for this live stream. But thank you very much. Jewel Elson, thank you so much for the Dancing Hippo, I think that is, super sticker. I appreciate that very much. Sasak saying, thanks for remembering. You're very welcome. I try to remember when I miss one week, and it does happen, then I do try to get back to it. Next time. D-Export saying, our questions answered off the live chat. I try my best to, as much as I can, pick them out. Certainly when I get to the end of my questions from patrons, then I dip into as many questions as I can from the chat as possible. Michael Zorn, thank you so much, saying, with the story George is writing with anti-war allegories and such, do you think there's any room for any of the dragons to survive the end? No, with a little asterisk. The end of this story has to see, I think, given this is about fire and ice, two equal and opposite forces, both of which could destroy the world. Both of them have to be dealt with or pushed back in order for the story to reach its thematic conclusion. Now, that means the others have to be dealt with, and it also means the dragons have to be dealt with, because dragons can destroy things and they have to be dealt with. Now, I think what happened on the show, obviously, was two of the dragons died, and then the third flew away with Dany. That could work. If that dragon has disappeared, then the threat to Westeros, which is our theatre for this story, effectively, that the dragons have gone away again and we do not know where they are. So that could work. I do, again, doing this reread through book one, so many different thoughts come out. One of them in that very same chapter where Dany and you get the king's blood falling on the dragon egg. There is a very clear language link that George R. R. Martin draws between the Blood Riders, the Carl's Blood Riders, and the dragons, a dragon for a dragon rider, calling out blood to blood. So Drogo calls his dragon riders blood of my blood, and that's emphasized a couple of times, and then at the end of it, Dany thinks about the egg and her unborn child calling out blood to blood, and the feel is very much that the dragons are like blood riders, and we're told that the blood riders, when the Carl dies, the blood rider's life is also ended. And so that thematically, certainly at that point in development of the story, thematically that seemed to imply that the dragons would have to all die. But as I say, if one of them flies over at the end of it, I think it's the same principle. Question from Kairos Ballerina. Picking up something from Video Game Vision Quest. Thank you very much. I love it when people do this, picking up questions from other people. Do you think the lack of plant life puts Asshai beyond the sight of Bloodraven? Could no children equals no children of the forest? Yes, so we're told that there are no children in Asshai. Does this mean no children of the forest? Well, I think what seems to put it beyond Bloodraven's sight is actually the fact that the Weirwood network is not connected to Essos. That, I think, that seems to be the best way from what we've seen of what he can see and do, and what Bran can and will be able to see and do. It's initially, what is it that the Weirwoods themselves can see, but then we're told, Bloodraven says you will be able to move beyond the trees. But what we seem to see in Essos, particularly with the shade of the evening trees in Qarth, is they seem to be like a corrupted, wrong, bad, opposite version of the Weirwoods. We don't get any reports of Weirwood trees being there because the the link, the land bridge between Dawn and the disputed lands, Westeros and Essos, was destroyed by the Hammer of the Waters, apparently. And I think that is what prevents him from seeing what's going on. He certainly doesn't seem to be manipulating events over there. The person who seems to be manipulating events is Dany. It's Dany. It's Quaithe who seems to be trying to manipulate Dany. A clue, which we will pick up on again in a moment when we get to who Quaithe might be. But I don't think he can see what's happening in Asshai. No. Cloaked One. Again, you're picking up something from someone else. Thank you. Really kind. So this is for Callie Summers. It seems like Dany won't be traveling around the world to the east anymore, but do you think George R. R. Martin's original plan would have shown us UT, the Five Forts, etc., or was it just world building? I think that George R. R. Martin's original plan, and I don't know, and he's not said this anywhere, but simply from the kinds of things we got, is that she would go to Asshai. So he introduced Quaithe in Qarth, and then it's like, to go west you must go east, to go north, to go south you must go north, and north and you must go south, and all the rest of it. So the going to Asshai thing, it's emphasized that Qarth is a port city and people do sail to Asshai from there. So I think what would have happened is that she, in a Clash of Kings in Qarth, she then goes off to Asshai. Then we have this 5-year gap when she's there. The dragons are growing. We can have all of the other kids can grow up a bit. I think that's how it was going to work. Then she can come back and then go to the Dothraki Sea, back to Vaes Dothrak and all of the rest of it. So that, I think, was where we were going to get it. And I think that Yi and Lang and all that bit, no, she wasn't going to go on this sort of trip all around the far east of Essos. That doesn't seem to be what George R. R. Martin was planning. It was just Asshai that he was talking about. But as I say, not just world building. I think it was with a purpose to show her. World building just to create a world for the world's sake. This was adding layers in to what he's giving us in this world. I think that's me caught up on the chat. I'll do a couple more questions from my patrons. Dominic Vaughan saying, hi, Robert, do you think we will ever get in-world confirmation of the demons, Grey Waste and Five Forts being connected to the original Long Night and are essentially the White Walkers by a different name? Yes, so we get, again, a little bit of geography lesson, that at the far east of Yi, there's a sort of a gap between a huge lake and some more mountains, and we have the Five Forts. Now, these are massive. They can each house 10,000 soldiers, we're told, and they are guarding the gap between Yi, civilization, as it were, and the Grey Waste, which is this cold desert. Out of that, apparently, comes the demons. Now, the parallels, many people have drawn this conclusion, and I think it's an entirely sound conclusion, which is that there is a parallel between that as a defensive fortification and the wall, which is to sort of protect the realms of civilized humanity from the cold Grey Waste beyond. Now, is this some link across to the Long Night before? As we've already mentioned many times over, the Far East is awash with legends of the Long Night the first time around, so almost certainly it happened. Pardon me, it happened over there as well. Now, if we accepted it happened over there, then we would expect to see some sort of response afterwards to try and make sure that this does not happen again. The creation of the Five Forts matches up with that. And had the question right at the beginning about is Planetos, is it spherical? Is it an actual round planet? And I think the answer we came to was yes, it is. And if so, if the others are based up on some sort of North Pole or near the North Pole, they wouldn't just be able to come down through Westeros, then surely at the top end of Essos as well. So it makes sense that was what happened. It was an attack two ways. And this may well be how we hear about them, these parts of the world, again, in the story going forward, which is if the others are in the move now in Westeros as they are they also on the move over in Essos in the Grey Waste? Are we to hear rumours that they are now attacking the Five Forts in the same way that we will hear rumours that they will come down and attack the well, we won't just hear rumours, we will actually see it, that they'll come to the wall. And I think that's definitely going to happen. We'll hear what's happening over in Essos as well. But the question is, will we get in-world confirmation of it? I don't think so, but I think it's made pretty clear. J Lord, in my headcanon, beyond Asshai and Qarth is the kingdom of Hyrule, and Arya will meet sail west, taking her east to meet Princess Zelda. Well, great headcanon. I think in terms of what Arya sailing west, this was like the TV show thing. It is possible that that's what she does in the books at the end of it all. I think she will survive, and you have to come up with a better conclusion for her story, because she will effectively get to the end of her list, and she will not wish to be a lord or lady. That still isn't going to be her after everything she's been through. So what does she do? She has sort of cast off the no one persona, I suspect, and re-established herself very much as a Stark, but she will not wish to be a part of the Stark establishment. Could she go back to the Faceless Men? Possibly, but I think she'll have done her time there. Could she warg full-time into Nymeria? Again, possibly. I think that does echo very well with her no longer being no one and also being a pure killer. Those are the things, the sort of the threads that run through her story, and being a direwolf rather than herself does certainly fit into that. So that's definite possibility. Heading west, we've already had Alyssa Farman, which George R. R. Martin has introduced recently into the canon, this idea of heading west to end up east. Could she do it? I mean, yeah, I think this is another option. I think she's the least easy character to see what she does after all this has happened. I think we're now pretty clear on what happens with Bran. I think we're now pretty clear on what happens with Jon. I think we're pretty clear on what happens with Sansa. I think what happens with Arya is less clear, but she's not going to just settle into the happy world of being a lady. Adam Price, thank you. Just saying thanks for the content. Thank you. I appreciate that. Shetland Apache saying, I would love a bleak future for Westeros where Dany goes east instead and the White Walkers are winning till Dany burns the north to get home. That is quite bleak. Yeah. I mean, great visuals. I think that George R. R. Martin still cannot get over this concept of a pincer movement on Westeros, which was at the end of the Winds of Winter, the others attacking from the north, the dragons coming in from the south, and the Westeros being sort of squeezed by the forces of ice and fire. I think that's where we're going to be ending this. a Targaryen Time Lord saying, "Hi, Robert. Hi. Very excited for this live stream. The Far East is one of my favorite topics, and it happens to fall on my birthday. Well, happy birthday to you. I hope I haven't missed it. I don't know what time zone you're in, but happy birthday, Targaryen Time Lord. I'm wondering about the five forts. It said that they are still manned today, guarding against raiders from the freezing grey waste. If the edge of Essos were possibly connected to the far north of Westeros, might George R. R. Martin be setting up Dany to be the saviour of a thus far unseen attack by others coming from the east?" Perhaps. I mean, I think that she will be doing it in the west. I think that what I outlined a moment ago with the others attacking from the east as well does set up the possibility that she or Drogon heads east, and the hope is that perhaps that could combat the incursions there, because I don't think George R. R. Martin will want to leave it hanging that they got destroyed, the others got destroyed just in Westeros and not in Essos. But my sort of slightly meta take on this is that I don't think that George R. R. Martin is setting the confrontation up with the others to be a matter of a big battle and humanity and the forces of good and peace and righteousness win because they're better fighters. That doesn't seem to be George R. R. Martin's mindset, that the answer, the solution to all of this is a big battle and the best side wins. That doesn't seem to be what the story he's trying to tell is. The way that the others will be defeated is by undoing the magic that created them. That is how they are going to be defeated. And this, incidentally, I'm not going to get into all of the whys and wherefores of season 8, but this is what they were trying to show in what Arya did. It came across, and this is how everybody interpreted it, as Arya's a kick-ass assassin and killed the Night King, and that was the end of it. But what they were trying to show is that the White Walkers were created by pushing dragon glass into the heart of the Night King in front of a weirwood tree, and they were uncreated by pushing Valyrian steel into the heart of the Night King in front of a weirwood tree. That was what they were trying to show, and that undid the magic. He wasn't killed. The magic that created him was undone. He was uncreated, and therefore all of the things that he created then sort of fell and were destroyed as well. That was what they were trying to show. Whether you think that they did that well or not is your opinion, but I think that they got that nugget from George R. R. Martin, that this isn't just about a battle. This isn't just about killing the baddies. This is about uncreating them. And so if you take that principle, that this is about uncreating them, then what happens in Westeros will impact what happens over in Essos as well. By which I mean that whatever the story equivalent of all of the others being uncreated at the same time by some magical means will also uncreate them over in Essos. It's not just the ones who happen to be within touching distance, it's all of them everywhere. So that means that Dany is not needed to be the savior of Essos, because whatever happens in Westeros will also save Westeros. CB Norwood saying, "What's the inside scoop on Stigai?" My impression is that of a more refined and less touristy version of Asshai, with the latter being full of posers and wannabes. And reflective rambling again. Thank you. Thank you. Picking up a question from Lara Vlogs: is there a connection between Stigai and the Ghost Grass prophecy, potentially keeping it in check and delaying the doom? So, Stigai is this city that I mentioned. It's in the Shadowlands. It's where the dead are, allegedly, and not even the Shadowbinders dare go there. This is, incidentally, it's very probably a nod to Robert E. Howard, who had a city called Stygia, and just the I and the A at the end of it were swapped around, and that had a very similar sounding description in the world of Conan. But this is a really interesting idea. So the ghost grass prophecies. The ghost grass is this sort of grass that grows in the Far East, and it's called ghost grass. It's luminous and all the rest of it. And the prophecy, it can't be eaten. It's not good at all for sort of grazing and things like that. And the prophecy from the Dothraki is that at one point the ghost grass will take over the world, and that's the end of the world. So is there some connection between them? I mean, it's a nice idea. It is a nice idea. Keeping it at bay in some way, delaying the doom. I mean, that I can't get around the fact that, and I have to say it as a possibility, that George R. R. Martin did just create those things just because they sound cool. And I have to just put it out there that maybe it's not all tied in together and meaningful and all the rest of it, maybe. And I would forgive him for that if he did just sort of go, you know what, that sounds really cool. I want something dark and shadowy and all the rest of it over in the far east. Let's create those things. But if we park that idea and try and work out whether this does have some connection in with the wider world, I think that the ghost grass, the fact that this is a Dothraki legend tells us a huge amount, that because this is their understanding of what brings life is ended by ghost grass, and so that is why it's important to them. For what the ends life for other cultures may well be completely different things. The cold in the north of Westeros, the cold is probably the winter that never ends. The long night, that is the kind of the same feel. So it's I personally put this more in this category of sort of monomyth. Is that what does the death of our civilization look like? The death of our civilization looks like a winter that never ends to Northerners. What does the death of the Dothraki civilization look like? An entire world covered by grass that horses can't eat. That, I think, is what it is, and that is the threat of the end of the world that we've got going on. And so it's this: there is something that threatens the end of the world, is the monomyth that comes down in lots of different places. Did I have another? I think I did have one more question from I've got a few more questions actually from my patrons, which I should definitely come to in a moment. Michael Zorn, thank you, saying, Robert, I love your videos, and especially these live streams. You're the most pleasant person ever. Well, thank you, that's very kind, and I always leave these streams happy. Thank you. Well, thank you, I very much appreciate that. Shauna Bass saying, I think that's boring as hell, but it's realistic, I guess, which I assume is a reference to me saying maybe George R. R. Martin just created it to be, because it's a cool thing. CB, no, I've just answered that one. Marley, let's get on to Qarth. Qarth is a mysterious character, and over the years, many folks in the community have tried to guess who she could be. Who do you think this mysterious woman is, and why? Okay, so I said we'd come around to this, and so here we go. And I did a video on this ages ago, if you are interested. So Qarth, we don't have many clues, but the clues that we do have are that she seems absolutely set on getting Dany to be a Targaryen and to get her to Westeros, and to get her very fire and bloody. That is the big clue that we have. She seems to understand. She seems to speak Dany's language, so the language of Westeros, common tongue over in Westeros, which seems to imply that she either came from there or and she seems to speak it well, or it's something that she's learnt from that part of the world. So she's not just from Asshai. She's not just a Shadowbind who's come up and randomly thought that she'd go and do this. So she seems to have a connection to Westeros. She seems to have a connection to the Targaryens. She seems to be magical. She seems to be long-lived, as far as we can tell. What do all of these things add up to? Well, I don't think we can say for certain, but I think we have a prime candidate, which is Shira Seastar. This was one of the great bastards, Aegon IV's children, bastard children, one of which was Bloodraven. Shira Seastar was another. Now, why is this possible? Because she's obviously got the link to Westeros. She is a Targaryen, so she understands that. She has therefore this motivation to be getting Dany to be more Targaryen-y. Also, it kind of works that she might have gone, as she was a magic user. We hear that Shira Seastar was a magic user, that she would have gone to Asshai to learn more magic. And while she was there, she may well have learned more about the Azor Ahai myths, and then been able to identify Dany as the person that she thought was the necessary person to push back against the others. So this all kind of fits together, and we have this literary level to it, which is that Bloodraven mentions the fact that, well, first of all, she does disappear from the story. We don't hear about her. Where did she go after Bloodraven had been alive? Since we don't know, she just disappears from the narrative. So she might have done. But Bloodraven talks about he tried to get in contact with her. He genuinely says that, I had a brother, a sister I loved, a brother I hated, and all the rest of it. And he says, I tried to get in contact with these people and it didn't work. If she was in Essos, that would make a whole lot of sense. But more importantly, from a literary level, we have two prime candidates to be Azor Ahai reborn in some way. One is Jon, one is Dany. Bloodraven has decided his champion is Jon. This is the person he thinks that he needs to be guiding, to be leading humanity against the others. Shira Seastar, or Qarth, I should say, has picked Dany. Dany is her champion. She is being the person who is, and they're both doing the same thing. Behind the scenes, manipulating, trying to push their champion to where they want them to be going. It would make so much literary sense if Bloodraven and Shira Seastar, who were very close, but not quite as close as Bloodraven would perhaps want, then were apart. If they picked different champions and they then met up finally, eventually, they were pushing these two champions. They'd both seen the same thing. They'd understood the same legends. They'd understood the same prophecies, but they'd seen different candidates. That, for me, works wonderfully at a kind of a literary level. Sylvester Snow saying, hello, Robert. What are your theories on the oily black stones of Asshai and Yin? Are they connected? What is the origin of the stone? I think I've covered that one off already, Sylvester. So I hope that I've given you a good enough answer for that. Just flicking through the chat. Robin Blackwood saying there are almost certainly places in A Song of Ice and Fire that are just references. I mean, Carcosa is a place name that has appeared in dozens of books before this. Yeah, absolutely. So George R.R. Martin does just pick random extra things, and he has a lot of fun with it. He genuinely does. The amount of times he picks names that are just things that he thinks are either fun or references and a nod to someone else. Sometimes you think he just gives up a lot of the places over in the Iron Islands, and he has the island and the castle and the family all have the same name, and it's just like, oh, come on, George. But he does. He has a lot of fun with naming characters and places, and there are so many of them. Okay, I've got 3 more slightly more random questions, then I shall drop into the chat and try and pick up a few more questions there. Stephen Dillon saying, so we know that both Miri Mazdoor and Melisandre were trained in Asshai. I heard a very strong theory that Jon won't be resurrected as a fire wight. Melisandre is a red priestess, and that process through the Lord of the Light brings back the spirit, but not really the body, as seen by Beric and Lady Stoneheart. However, when Miri brought back Drogo, his body came to life, but not his spirit. Do you think that Melisandre might be able to combine both methods to bring Jon back without too many negative effects? Okay. This is what I think is happening with Jon. Jon dies. I think that in his last chapter, there's so many references to this. His body is kept in the ice cells. Now, this, as well as there being sort of references to this, it makes absolute sense. What are they going to do? There are so many different factions in Castle Black at this time. There are Jon loyalists, there are the wildlings, there are the rebels, there are lots of different groups. There's the Queen's Guard, lots of people left over from Stannis's army. It's a very confusing situation. What are they going to do with the dead body of the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch? Well, they're going to freeze him. they're going to put off the decision. They cannot make the decision. They do not know. They probably want to elect another Lord Commander. They'll figure it out. And we've already seen in that chapter, as I was saying, they've had confirmation. It would appear that bodies left in the ice cells do not rise to become wights. So they freeze the body. Jon, however, all of the indications are his spirit has gone off into ghost. So it's not the same situation that we had with Beric and Lady Stoneheart. What happened there was that they died, their spirit went away wherever the spirit goes, and then they get called back. And a bit of them is lost. Now, what happened with Beric was he came back so many times, each time another little bit of him was lost. With Lady Stoneheart, it was that she'd been dead for a long time, so quite a lot of her was lost. That seems to have been what's happened. With Jon, he will be inside Ghost for a period of time. We do not know how long. When he comes back, and I will explain that bit in a moment, he will probably be still all himself, but perhaps slightly more combined with Ghost, so perhaps slightly more wolfish, whatever that means. Insert your own thoughts about. Maybe this means that he's more of a loner, more of a pack animal, more of a killer, quieter. Who knows what that might mean? More brooding, I think. Imagine Jon being more brooding. That seems to be where he will be going. Now, the question is, how is he going to? I think it will be Melisandre, but it will probably be a combination of Melisandre and someone perhaps even Bloodraven, who can walk in and push him from Ghost back into his body. His body will be thawed. It won't just go into the ice cells and him waking up frozen in the ice cells. I think that his body will eventually, the decision will be made to burn his body. It will be thawed, and then he will be brought back to life. This is, again, I mean, the visual I want as much as anything, brought back to life in the flames. Melisandre will see this as the flames were the thing that brought him back to life. In reality, he was brought back by somebody hoiking his spirit from Ghost and putting it into his body, which means that he's not a fire white, as it were. He is not an ice white, as it were. He's something completely different. He is not going to have the same issues that Lady Stoneheart had, for example. So that's my take on what's going to be happening with Jon. Melisandre will definitely claim it as her victory, though, I think. Shetland Apache saying, what are your thoughts on a theory that every mute person in the story is someone a warg rides? Varys's birds, Euron's crew, etc. It's an interesting theory. I certainly think that the Dusky Woman, Euron, is walking into the Dusky Woman to keep an eye on Victarion. His crew, I don't know whether he walks into them or not. I'm not 100% sure. Ilyn Payne, does anybody walk into him? I mean, I'm not 100% sure. Varys's birds, his little birds. I mean, I like the idea, but I don't think we've got enough concrete examples of where that obviously is happening. There are a lot of people who've lost their tongues in this story. It really does. I mean, enough that makes you think that this is leading to something, that there is definitely going to be somewhere. And, the Tyrion losing his tongue, I'm not going to go down that theory, but Tyrion losing his tongue is definitely a possibility, given the amount of people, minor-ish characters, who lose their tongues in this. It surely has to be leading to somewhere. But everyone who's lost their tongue gets warged is not something I'd have to see a bit more evidence on that one, I think. Robin Blackwood saying, do you think ghost grass could be a metaphor for White Walkers, an endless force that consumes all other life in its path until nothing else lives? Yeah, absolutely. Could definitely be a metaphor. Slick Will 91, is it possible that when they try to burn Jon, he won't burn because of his Targaryen ancestry? No, so Targaryens, this is how Targaryens, they weren't buried, they were cremated. So Targaryens are not immune to fire, but they do have an element of fire resistance, if that makes sense. So Dany has scaldingly hot baths, but that doesn't mean that she can't be burnt to death. Similarly with Jon has been burned. His hand has been burned, so he is not immune to fire himself. But yes, I think it would be seen as a sort of a Targaryen hint anyway. Michael James, thanks for the super chat. I'm just looking at, I think that says fist bump. Thank you very much for that. Lawnduck20 over on Patreon saying, hello Robert, Lomas Longstrider said there were 9 wonders made by man, with the triple walls of Qarth being one of them, but we are actually only aware of 7. So in your opinion, what do you think the other 2 wonders are? And will George R. R. Martin tell us? Marley, you also asked about them. I just, for those who don't know, I just clicking on the link to them because I knew I'd forget some of them if I tried to list them off the top of my head. But Lomas Longstrider, so is this character who 300 and something years ago, post Doom of Valyria, but during the Century of Blood, traveled the world, wrote a couple of books about the wonders that he saw. And one of the books was The Nine Wonders Made by Men, and we get a few name checks of this through the series. In A Song of Ice and Fire, in The World of Ice and Fire, we get a couple of mentions. George R. R. Martin himself has also mentioned a couple. The ones we have definitely are the Valyrian Roads, the Wall, the Titan of Bravos, the Triple Walls of Qarth, the Three Bells of Norvos, the Long Bridge of Volantis, and the Palace with 1,000 Rooms in Sarnath, which leaves two. So the question is, what are those two? Now, I think there's for me, there are three obvious possibilities here. One of them is the High Tower, the highest building in Westeros. Another one is the Five Forts, and a third option is the Great Pyramid in Meereen. Now, obviously, the Great Pyramid would have a strong link across to the Seven Wonders of the Ancient World in our world, which kind of makes me think that maybe it's that. I think we hear that Lomas Longstrider didn't go to the Five Forts. I may have got that one wrong. So if I had to guess, the Great Pyramid, even though when he went there it was a little bit ruined, this was before it got completely rebuilt, it will still have been a magnificent sight, I am sure. I'm going to suspect that, and possibly the High Tower or the Five Forts. Kaios Ballerina, what would happen to a child that goes to Asshai? Would they drop dead? I get conceiving being magically impossible, but why can't they go there? Well, we don't know. It's the boring answer, but we do not know. We don't know why there aren't children there. It would make sense that you can't grow things, so maybe you can't, as you say, conception may be magically impossible. What about a child who goes there? I think the answer is, who would take a child there? This isn't a place that you would take children to. So I think that's probably, it's the, there are no children there. It's just that none are born there and no one would bring children there. But we've not been told. It would seem to be an odd sort of magic that kills anyone under a certain age. But hey, we get that kind of thing in other bits of fantasy. So again, maybe George R. R. Martin is nodding to those other fantasy stories. I'm just off the top of my head, I could think of his Dark Materials has a very much a sort of a child cut-off thing, and then you get other things like Narnia, for example. Only children can experience Narnia. So there is, within fantasy literature, there is a clear idea of some magical cutoff that only children can or can't do certain things. Alhad Parashtika, thank you so much, saying, hi Robert, what truth does Dany would Dany have learnt in Asshai? Is it just her dragon nature or something more? Yeah, I covered this one off a little bit earlier in the live stream. I suspect you might not have been here for that. So this is what Qarth tells her about this. So this is we have to interpret it through the prism of this being something Qarth thinks that she ought to know. She is not going to go to Asshai, so I think that George R. R. Martin is going to round this off with she will learn about Azor Ahai, which I think she will get from the priests, from the Red Priests, and I think that the Asshai link is going to be through Qarth, who comes from Asshai, was trained in Asshai, and I think that the remembering who she is part of that. You are a Targaryen. Fire and blood is your ancestry, and the Azor Ahai Reborn has the dragons. I think that is basically what she would have learned in Asshai, but George R. R. Martin is now going to drop it in slightly different ways in the books. Last question from my patrons, and now is a good time to drop any questions into the chat. I will try and pick up as many as I can. Sylvia Galasso saying, I started rereading the books and have a question about the Bran chapter. This is in book 1, where he is in a coma and dreaming of falling, with the three-eyed crow teaching him how to fly. He says he sees 3 shadows, one dark as ash with the terrible face of a hound, Sandor, another armoured like the sun, beautiful and golden, Jaime, and over them both loomed a giant in armour made of stone. But when he opened his visor, there was nothing inside but darkness and thick black blood. Do you think this is the zombie mountain? I do not believe Gregor had appeared in the books yet at that point. I wonder why his armour is described as made of stone. Okay, so I think, yes, it's definitely the mountain made of stone, because mountains are made of stone. I think it's as straightforward as that. The visor thing and inside is darkness is a really interesting, because this is a foreshadowing, maybe we'll call it. When the mountain becomes a zombie mountain, he's reincarnated, his armor is on, it never comes off, and his helmet is on all the time. And what we hear is that people look and all they can see is darkness. They can't see a face in there. All they can see is darkness in this helmet, which seems to be sort of solidly on the shoulders. Now, we're also told that his head was sent to Dawn. And this is an outlandish, huge head. So a lot of people say, well, this can't be his head because, we've got Robert Strong was reincarnated, this is Zombie Mountain. I think it actually was. George R. R. Martin can be quite grim and dark at times. I think this was his head, but his body has been reanimated without his head. So the visor, the helmet is covering up the fact that there is no head in there. It's just shoulders down. And that, I think, is what has been happening, and also explains this idea of the giant in armor made of stone. When he opened his visor, there was nothing inside but darkness and thick black blood. I think that is just a vision of what is going to happen with the mountain, who will make an appearance in just a few chapters after that, when at the turning of the hand. Okay, so have a quick flick through the chat. Reflective Rambling saying, picturing a Mandalorian mountain, must not remove the helmet. Yeah, absolutely, that's the feel. Marcos Targaryen saying, do you think Daenerys could visit Asshai through a glass candle? She could, but you need to be connected to a person, really. I think she would need to be talking. I don't think just looking at Asshai would give her any information. I think it would need to be connected. Bombadil, will Daenerys slay Griff, Aegon, and be the slayer of lies that people theorize of? Yeah, so she's is the slayer of lies, and one of those lies appears to be young Griff, Fagon. So will she slay him? I think the dragons will, rather than her personally. John Muad'Dib saying, do you think Euron will sit on the Iron Throne briefly? I don't think he will. No, I think that the Iron Throne is going to... I think Cersei will sit on it. Then we're going to get... Fagon will sit on it. Then after Fagon, then it's going to be Dany who is there. I mean, I don't think he will sit on it. I mean, maybe he could. Maybe there's a small gap in there where he might come in. It fits in with the visions that we're getting in the Forsaken chapter, but that's not really where it's not plot necessary. I think is what I'm trying to say. Slick Will 91 saying George R. Martin said he wants to eventually do a Silmarillion. He has also said World of Ice and Fire is essentially a rough draft of that. Will we find out about the high fantasy side in is Qarth? Yes, so I think in terms of the will he do a Silmarillion? Silmarillion, I don't think. I mean, I hate to be the person though, because everyone always says it, but and I try to be as optimistic as we can. But George R. Martin has to write this book. After that, he's going to be writing probably another Dunk and Egg. Then he's got another book to do. Then he wants to do Fire and Blood Part 2. Then he also wants to finish off the Dunk and Egg stories. He's also got 1,000,001 other projects outside of the World of Ice and Fire that he's got going on. I don't think we're going to see any other things beyond that. Certainly we won't see them for a couple of decades, even if we do. So I hate to be that guy, but I don't think that's going to be happening. John Mardib, do you think Euron went to Stygia and encountered a Lovecraftian entity that changed him? No, I think that he got changed by drinking lots and lots of the Shade of the Evening juice. Question, Bubble Led saying he wants to write a total of 10 to 12 Dunk and Egg stories. Yeah, I think he has to, given the rate that he's going through there. Mathieu Dominique, I think George will get to A Dream of Spring. Silmarillion is unrealistic. The Gurmarillion, as he sometimes refers to it. I think it is unrealistic. Is it true that Qarth is the lost Targaryen princess who went west? I think, personally, as I say, I think Qarth is Shira Seastar. I mean, I'm not 100% on that, but she seems the most. If she is a person we know, that's the person that best fits the facts that we've got going on. Kairos Ballerina saying, Jolie would like to know whether you think Stygia could have been the Bloodstone Emperor's palace, like the Forbidden City, and whether the black stone that fell from the sky is still there. Yeah, that certainly makes sense. So the Emperor, the Bloodstone Emperor, is sort of seen as the heretic whose usurpation caused the Long Night in the legends over there, and started worshipping black stone that fell from the sky. Could that have been Stygia? It's possible. It's possible also it could have been Asshai. There's a lot of blackstone going on there. Maybe he made an entire city out of blackstone. He became so obsessed with it. So that's impossible. That is possible. I mean, Barros Aurelius saying, congrats again on 230,000 subscribers. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. John Mardib, do you think Euron is the Antichrist of A Song of Ice and Fire? I don't think Antichrist is probably the way. He's certainly an antagonist. I would put him more in the Saruman role. Is where I would put him. Abby Nee, and I said I would get this name wrong again, so I'm not even going to try and pronounce your surname. Apologies, but saying thanks for this stream, Robert. I think I will go and become a patron. Thank you. I hugely appreciate that. And you also say Euron is 100% the Antichrist. What a scary guy. Yeah, so I mean, I get it. He's a very, very scary guy, and a lot more scary in the books. Matthew Dominique, I got a bit of approval for that early in the chat. Would you consider doing a guest live stream doing Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones karaoke for 250k subs? No. Thank you. You would not wish to hear me do karaoke, I can assure you, but thank you for that. Robin Blackwood, will we ever get any answers on the smooth black stone, or is it the mystery the kind of point of it? I suspect yes, the mystery is the point of it, really. Okay, and I think with that Oh, Andrew K saying, are the Traveller's Guide still in playlist form? Some in the chat mentioning that they were not finding it that way recently. Yeah, they should still be in playlists. So the Traveller's Guide should be in 2 playlists. I've got the Traveller's Guide to Westeros and the Traveller's Guide to Essos. I think I've got the whole thing. If you go into the Westeros one, I think I've put all of the Essos ones in there as well. But yeah, the playlist should definitely still be there. If they aren't, then do shout next week and I'll do something about it. Reflective rambling. Will the guarded records in UT be a saving grace after the Citadel's libraries are destroyed? A possible rise in importance? Yeah, possibly. There's Asshai is where the lots of information is. UT basically, they're not letting anyone get that information at all. So I think that's just part and parcel of the world, as there's a bit of the world that we simply do not understand, and that is okay. Okay, I think next week what I'm going to be doing is I will do more of an open Q&A, and then after that I will move on into a slightly different series. As I say, I'm looking in the summer, I'm going to be doing some Lord of the Rings live streams, so do let me know in the comments down below if you've got any thoughts on what I could be covering in these live streams going forward. I'd really appreciate any thoughts on that. We've gone through families, we've gone through across the world of Ice and Fire. So yes, it's a matter of where we go next after this. But anyway, I think I will be back. Well, I know I will definitely be back this time next week, and I think I will do that as an open Q&A. If you are interested in watching more of these live streams, there will be a link appearing up here somewhere a bit afterwards. And if you are interested in becoming a patron, supporting this channel, there is a link that's going to be appearing somewhere around here if you're watching back afterwards. Okay, take care, everyone. Some really great questions this time, and I will see you again soon. Bye.